Hello and welcome to Gamepass Gaming's Sunday podcast. I am your host, Flap, and as ever, we have a stellar lineup tonight with our panel. Lots of great topics to delve into. It's been a particularly good news week if you are an Xbox fan, and we will be picking that apart as we go through. So without any further ado, let's introduce the panel for the evening. So first up, my wingman, as always, Puxley. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Flap. Yes, thank you very much. It's been quite an interesting week, as you just mentioned. And I imagine you might come to this shortly anyway, but we are, as of right now, watching yesterday's matchup against Midweek Gaming, correct?
We are indeed. So yeah, this was our matches from yesterday's show. So we did quite well, boys, didn't we? We managed to pull in a 6-0 victory. I think we they did have some poor spawns, as you'll probably see during this footage, but I think we did quite well as well. I think one thing that's been noted about our team is the comms, and I think our comms were on point yesterday. Probably more so than my aiming, to be fair. But again, you'll see that during the stream. So no, it's been a good week, hasn't it, Pucks?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I didn't feel like my game was as good yesterday as it was the first week, personally. But I think as a team, I agree. I think we did really well. I've seen a lot of comments about our comms as well, actually, which kind of pleasantly surprises me in a way. Because I know when we're playing privately, sometimes you can get a bit... I don't want to say weird, but sometimes you just get too engrossed in the game to constantly chat. But then I think in the back of my mind, knowing it's like a competition, like we're actually got to play to move up a rank, so to speak, it kind of, I don't know, I feel myself taking it more seriously, if that makes sense.
I don't know how you guys feel, but we seem to have a game face because when we play sort of socially, not in the competition, we kind of do our thing. And we kind of we talk to each other comms wise, but when we're in the competition, we're absolutely on point with that. So it's fantastic. Well, let's invite the next panel member and welcome to the show and a very valued Gamepass Gaming regular, Scott SX2. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much, Flap. Obviously, great to see everyone today. You mentioned 6-0, Flap. That's 6-0 back to back now. So we haven't lost a match yet. Don't want to jinx it too much, but
we haven't lost a game yet, have we?
Yeah,
wow,
we've done it pretty well. So if there's a sense of smugness in our voices tonight, I guess you might know why. So but thanks for having me on again. I guess this is mine and Luke's as well. First show since, I guess, you confirmed us being more permanent members of the GPG crew. So yeah, really excited for the show tonight as well.
We did, and you had your first outing, sort of flying solo, as it were. That's got some great traction. You've had over 200 views on that as well. Obviously discussing the Microsoft Bethesda deal.
Yeah, it's been really, really cool to see that. Actually, I said to you guys afterwards, it was scary, it was nerve-wracking, but seeing people in the chat communicating, seeing comments afterwards has been really, really cool to see. So thank you to anyone who, I guess, tuned in or commented or left any feedback. It was really, really nice to see. But most importantly, Flab, big thank you to you as well, because you set that up within like 5 minutes. You had that ready to go and you had things running in the background. So I just had to concentrate on speaking. So yeah, big thank you to you for that as well, mate.
No problem. No, that's fine. We've kind of get this all set up now. So yeah, it's quite easy to be able to jump in and do things like that. So yeah, anytime. And last but certainly no means least, and unfortunately our graphic is covering his name, we've got Luke Steele. Luke, how are you doing, my friend?
Oh, I'm very well, thanks. Yeah, it's just been great playing Halo. Like, it's been really, really, really great playing it again. And I know it's I think there's always complaints about how archaic some of the kind of systems are in the old games, and that's very true. But for me, it's such a nostalgia rush playing these games, and it really does take me back to playing them on LAN and with friends, and it's just been great. And also we're awesome at it, apparently. So or at least by the 2 matches. So don't want to jinx it, but we're doing well, and hopefully we can keep it going for as long as possible. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there's 2 frames of mind, isn't there? If we knock people out, that they probably either want to get beaten by the winners, or they just want to see us get stomped into the ground.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if we're making many friends on the journey, but we'll find out.
Yeah, it's all about.
Sorry, go on, Luke. Sorry.
No, I was going to say it's all about the W. It's not. We're not here to make friends.
I was going to say, do we know who we're up against yet? next week?
No, I believe, and anyone in the chat, and we'll come to you in a second, chat, if you don't mind. Chat, let us know. I think Boom and Xbox 448 game is 5 o'clock Eastern time now. I think their clocks went forward. So does that make it? I think that might make it 9 p.m. our time. So they might actually be playing while we're on the air. And you know what? I might treat us. If they are, I might be able to live stream theirs through this podcast. So that would be quite cool to see if we can get that going.
Nice. That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do on that front. But anyone in the chat, if you're able just to confirm when the Pucks and Xbox, Pucks Boom and Xbox 448 games being played, I'd be grateful, and we'll try and sort of live stream it on this one as well. That would be pretty cool. So fantastic chat. Thank you very much for being here, my friends. All great to see the regulars in the chat. Xbox XNT, Black Eyed Dog guys, thank you for being here. Always a pleasure. Please get involved in the chat as well. I know you're pretty much active members in the chat, but we've got some great topics tonight. And, let's get straight into them, shall we? So, what a week this has been. I think we've been waiting for this week since, I think it was September the 21st last year. So it's a long time, over 6 months, roughly 6 months, to actually get this news that the deal is actually completed and it's gone through. So that's fantastic. That was the first part of the week's news, but obviously there were still questions yet to be answered, mainly around exclusivity. And I think us as Xbox fans, I don't know. I think we wanted Xbox to have these games exclusive because it does actually bolster the brand. It makes it more of an appealing brand. And at the end of the day, we want lots of players on the Microsoft server and in the Microsoft ecosystem, just like Microsoft do. So we've got more people we can play with. But let's just quickly go through Phil's statement. I know every podcast known to man has probably read out Phil's statement, but let's just quickly go through it and pick it apart if we can. So he says, obviously, I can't sit here and say every Bethesda game is an Xbox exclusive, because we know that's not true. There's contractual obligations that we're going to see through. We have games that exist on other platforms, and we're going to go and support those games on the platforms they're on. There's communities of players. We love those communities, and we'll continue to invest in them. And even in the future, there might be either contractual things or legacy on different platforms that we'll go do. Okay, so that's pretty cool. And I think lots of people sort of feel satisfied that they kind of know what's going on with Xbox and its exclusive. So let's go to you first, Scott, if you don't mind. Do you think, and let's do this one briefly if we can, but do you think that answers the question around Xbox exclusivity, or do you think there's still a few unanswered questions there?
I think without a shadow of a doubt, it sort of puts the end to that question at this point. It's clear as day within that one statement. I was actually surprised that he mentioned it, because they did mention something a little bit more vague in the press release on Xbox Wire earlier in the week. So I was surprised that they went into more detail. But I think that really draws a line under the conversation now. You can pick apart the different things like legacy and communities and things like that, but I think it's obvious as to which games they're referring to when they're talking about that. So yeah, absolutely. I think they've clarified it, and I think that's everyone should hopefully be able to move on now, basically.
Well, let's go back to that at some point. Yeah, perhaps we will pick it apart and sort of go into what we think Phil meant by some of these sort of statements, because it's a strange one for me, because in my head it feels like he has kind of closed it down, but there's still lots of lots of questions that are still left to be answered in certain regards. But Luke, do you feel satiated that the information that was given has satisfied you, that you know exactly what's going on with Xbox?
Yeah, I think so. I think, as Scott said, the original Xbox Wire quote was very vague, still very vague. And it's always difficult, I think, or difficult sometimes, to convey the actual position via, a brief bit of text, because text like that leaves it open to interpretation. So it was nice that Phil actually came out and actually gave a statement on it, and I found it very clear, and I think it settled the matter going forward, whilst still kind of leaving it open a bit for the future in terms of Phil didn't rule anything specifically out when he was talking about the Game Pass element of it, which I found quite interesting. It wasn't, there wasn't speak about platforms per se. There was speak about the service. So, and we can probably delve into that more. But it was interesting. But I think it was quite clear.
Yep, I agree. And I know perhaps there are certain aspects of the community out there that are still trying to sort of weave and twist perhaps what was said into a slightly different narrative. But everyone, and I'm quite pleased that this is the case, everyone still seems to be pretty clear on what Phil's words actually meant. Pux, do you feel the same? Are you pretty clear on where Xbox is heading?
Yeah, I believe so. I know I've seen a few comments in the chat. Wakanda Xbox News today mentioned earlier that unfortunately some are still twisting some of the statements which you've read out. And I've unfortunately seen a bit of this as well, and people may be thinking that, oh, surely they can't do this, and it kind of comes back to the whole console wars thing. But for me, it's clarified it up enough. I mean, I think the statement quite well worded. Actually, I quite liked the way that Phil mentioned about how
he's very articulate with what he says, isn't he? Every word he says seems to be very well placed. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, because what was it? I can't remember the exact line word by word, but it was Game Pass. Games will be exclusive to where Game Pass exists, I believe, is kind of what he said. And I thought that's very well. I think that was well worded, because there were a number of people that started saying about, Microsoft want to throw Game Pass on Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation. It's just like, well, that's not going to happen. I don't know why people would insinuate such a thing. But for me, it's maybe more, it already exists on Android as well as, PC and xCloud. But for me, that kind of maybe the stretch for there would be, because I know they're still trying to push it onto iOS, for example, and come up with a solution to put Game Pass there. So for me,
spring 2021, I believe that's due for.
Yeah, okay. So for me, that's almost like an extension of that, Game Pass, we're trying to expand it in some ways, and it's going to be wherever you would decide to play. And for me, that was as clear as anything, quite personally. And I'm a bit more convinced now that there will definitely be those big hitters in the future that will be exclusive to the, I don't even want to say Xbox platform anymore. I want to say the Game Pass ecosystem. Yeah. I think it's more accurate.
Yeah.
We mentioned that a few shows ago, didn't we? Is Xbox actually the platform anymore, or is actually Game Pass the platform?
Yeah, and I think back then it was almost, we kind of half laughed at it and half took it seriously. But as of right now, today, after the the showcase or whatever it was, 2 or 3 days ago, I think that's more accurate now than ever. I think Game Pass is definitely becoming a platform of its own right, rather than just Xbox. So I think these things are definitely going to be exclusive in the future. Again, there's obviously contractual obligations, which he's mentioned. Ghostwire Tokyo and Deathloop. I know we've also mentioned about, Deathloop is a console exclusive, but then we've heard talk that it's actually only a timed exclusive. So I think there's a bit of maybe inconsistent information that I've personally heard about that particular game for that instance. But for the most part, I think bigger titles moving forward, like brand new stuff which comes out in the future, I think 100% exclusive to Game Pass.
No, that's interesting. And we are going to, again, we're going to delve into this probably next, delving into those sort of parts. But we've had some really interesting comments already. Chat, thank you very much for being here. We've had some great comments already. Let's delve into those first, Bucks.
Yeah, okay. I'll start from the top, actually, because this was actually during the introductions, and I'm not 100% sure what this means. Black Eyed Dog asks us, Green Pass Gaming, when are you going to have a membership? If I'm assuming right, and you're saying it's a YouTube membership, is that what that means?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, So we can't actually have any of these kind of advertised based things until we have 1,000 subs. If I'm speaking correctly.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. So there's two benchmarks. You have to have 4,000 public watched hours. That's one of the benchmarks, and you have
which
to have
we have now reached,
subs.
I believe.
I think we've got about 4,500 public watched hours now, believe it or not. So we've absolutely smashed that one. But we're still trying to get the sub count up. It's not about the numbers. I know we say that, and then we bang on about the numbers. It's I think for us, for me and Pux, it's always been a surprise at how well and how fast Green Pass Gaming took off. And so when we see extra subs, it's absolutely exciting and fantastic. And it's just we love what we do, and it seems other people like what we do as well, and that brings us much joy.
Yeah, no, definitely. So yeah. As you say, we're not the biggest number watchers, but we appreciate all of you supporting. And if you do want to support us in other ways in the future, then helping us get to 1,000 subs is definitely I'd argue, one of the better ways to do that. So please help us spread the word if you so wish to. Wakanda Xbox News today says, I've read this out earlier already, so unfortunately, yes, some are twisting the statements which have been made. We've just spoken about that. But Wakanda did follow up saying that he reckons that Phil did nail it, though. And I agree with this, actually. I quite like, again, I think Phil articulated a lot of his words very well during the show piece. That was very nice to see. And Black Eyed Dog also says here, the fact that it was hosted by Bethesda with Phil not taking the lead was to show Bethesda fans that that Xbox were not going to be their overlords. Clever.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, Dragon Wolf's just put a comment in as well. It's good that Xbox keeps pushing PlayStation and vice versa. And I absolutely agree. You know what? I was watching Spawnwave earlier. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that particular YouTube channel. I'm sorry, Luke, you keep getting covered up. This reminds me of Monsters Inc., where Mike... Sorry. I was watching Spawnwave earlier, and he was saying about how disastrous the Xbox One launch was and stuff. And, we know that. We've trodden that path many times on this podcast alone. But now, and we mentioned this a couple of podcasts ago, the tides are turning. And you know what? I was actually watching Crap Gamer earlier for my sins, and he's already starting to turn that oil tanker around, and his video was full of praise for Microsoft and stuff. And it's like, okay, he's gonna turn around again and be an Xbox fan. And it's just so much momentum. And one thing that the guy mentioned on Spawnwave was that Xbox actually seem to know where they're heading now, possibly more so than perhaps the other two. Perhaps Nintendo comes next because they've nailed it with the Switch, absolutely nailed it with the hardware, and they know that they want to pursue that. It's not gimmicky like the Wii, so you can use it. It is practical, and I think it's got longevity, unlike the Wii to a certain degree. PlayStation are, set in their ways, very traditional, classic. You kind of know what you're getting and stuff. But Microsoft at the moment, they absolutely know where they're heading with all of this, and they've been banging the Game Pass drum for a long time, and it's fantastic to see because all three of the main platform holders seem to be diverging slightly and going, treading their own paths. So it is absolutely interesting to see. And like you say, I think Phil absolutely nailed the narrative of where Microsoft are heading. Sorry, that was a long rant, wasn't it?
No, that was good. No, that's kind of where I caught up so far. But I did just see two more, or one in particular from Wakanda, just saying that Game Pass equals console, PC, mobile, TV, and basically anywhere. Which, again, it's starting to become true, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll come on to that, actually. Yeah, let's come on to that. I'm keen to come back to that one. And Wakanda just come out with another one saying the roundtable was brilliant, and this is the way forward, in his opinion, Bethesda to take over the PR and marketing. And it was quite good to see that, Phil didn't take the lead necessarily, did he? It wasn't him hosting the thing. He was a sort of a guest on their show.
Yeah, because the show was kind of poised to mainly be an introduction to us, the consumers, as to who these people were, and that we're going to see these names more often. But as you say, it was kind of a nice surprise that he did actually take a back seat, and it was more actually hearing and seeing and talking with everyone else. So no, 100%. I really thought it was a good show.
Yeah, no, me too. Well, let's dive into some of the legacy ones. Let's do the legacy thing. Scott, we'll come to you. I haven't heard from you for a while. Legacy, are we talking Fallout 76 and Elder Scrolls Online, do you think? Is there anything else?
I think when he's talking about communities, I think he's referencing the Fallout 76 and Elder Scrolls Online communities personally, because they're obviously games that, they're MMOs essentially, or at least online games that require the active communities to basically populate the game. Otherwise, what's the point? What's the point in them? I think when it comes to legacy, I thought that was an interesting comment because personally speaking, I find that the main games, the Elder Scrolls and Fallout games, I was more of the opinion that those had legacies on the Xbox platform. And I actually don't think an awful lot of Bethesda's games actually have, or at least released titles have actually got a legacy on PlayStation. Obviously, Xbox and Bethesda in the past have had quite a close relationship with games like Morrowind. If I remember correctly, that was essentially a 360 exclusive. Oh, sorry, original Xbox exclusive. I don't think that came to PlayStation. But when it comes to legacy titles on PlayStation, anyone, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't really think of any. The only thing I can maybe think of is games such as Ghostwire Tokyo and Deathloop in the future, with them coming to PlayStation first, and there could be an argument in the future that those have got a legacy on PlayStation. Therefore, maybe sequels to those games, if they do arrive, will land on PlayStation. But when we talk about sequels and things like that, I know there was an argument where people said, "Oh, look, the Wolfenstein games, Elder Scrolls, they've been on PlayStation, so they'll want to continue the story on other platforms." But then I look at games like Hellblade 2. Hellblade 2 started out as a PlayStation exclusive, only came to Xbox much later, and Hellblade 2 is going to continue Senua's story, and that's not going to come to PlayStation. So the legacy phrase was interesting, and I don't think that really captures any, I guess, previous games, and may, in my opinion, be more referring to Deathloop and Ghostwire.
Flap, you there? We lost you.
Oh, I think you might be muted, Flap.
Oh, sorry. Yes. No, you're right, and I completely agree. He did also mention that obviously support for legacy games as well. So I'm guessing if there's any patching or anything like that that needs to happen, that they're obviously going to commit to that as well, I guess. Luke, anything to add on the legacy side of things? Do you think it's kind of the online services and things like that he's on about?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's clear that they will continue to support anything that's an online service game that's on other platforms, predominantly obviously PlayStation in this case. I think the legacy comment, the way I read the legacy comment, was more referring to because I know some people look at it as saying, okay, well, if Elder Scrolls appeared on PlayStation, for example, that means, or maybe a new Elder Scrolls will come on PlayStation. But I don't think that's the meaning of legacy when Phil's talking about it. I think what he means is that where games have been released on a platform, where you have a release on a platform, Microsoft and Bethesda will continue to support that, i.e. legacy content. So content that's in the past, basically. So I think, when Deathloop comes out for PlayStation 5, and then down the line it comes out on the Xbox, if there's an expansion to Deathloop, that's going to be on PlayStation 5, right? And it will get support through patches, etc. And the same for Ghostwire Tokyo. I don't think there's no real natural interpretation of the word legacy in the way Phil's describing it, to suggest that, just because a series has been on a platform before, it means that it's going to continue coming to that platform, because clearly that's completely at odds with the next sentences that Phil says, about exclusive content to Game Pass, all that sort of stuff. So I think that's the reading I got from it, and I think that makes sense.
Okay, to be honest, I'm of the same opinion, and that's kind of good, because, like you say, it kind of demonstrates that although the word legacy can have many sort of different iterations, that we're all kind of assuming the same sort of thing. So that's pretty cool. Right, new to the show. I say new to the show, new to this evening's show. Removable Sanity. He was a guest that we'd invited, and looks like you've been having some internet issues. In fact, I'll just drop that so we can see your name. How are you doing? Sounds like you've had a bit
unfortunately, we've been having some roadworks, and someone decided to put a spade through a wrong wire and took out the entire road. Wow. So yes, we've been down absolutely completely for a good about 3 to 4 hours. And unfortunately, 4G isn't brilliant round here at the best of times. So I apologise profoundly. It's just luck. It was like, you've got to be kidding me. And I can't even talk to anybody either to mention it either. It was just I feel guilty enough as it is. And again, it's thank you for just letting me be on the show. I apologise so in advance. I really do.
It's not a problem. Like I say, we enjoyed having you on last time, my friend. So that the invite was always coming. I did say expect the invite in the post, and there it was.
It was, I mean, it was the irony. We had it no problem. Everything was all sorted, and then all of a sudden, outside events conspired against me. So I feel like a complete fraud now.
That's no problem. Well, we've been talking about obviously the Bethesda roundtable with Phil, and we're just interested to know what your take on the legacy comment was. What do you think he meant by the legacy side of things?
I really, to be honest with you, I'm kind of in the same boat as the guys listening to the elements that you discussed. It's pretty much exactly what you guys are feeling. It is, as you said, it can mean numerous things, but I think, to be honest with you, it's probably going to be the background titles upon which they're going to be using. To be honest, you've picked up everything I was going to speak to, unfortunately, about it. The irony is like. Yeah, you've picked for the one time only. You've actually picked up everything I was about to say. It was like I've unfortunately hit the wrong time. Yeah, no, I agree generally with principles of what you're saying here, because you're correct. I don't know what more to say, John. Unfortunately, that's the problem. You've literally hit every time. I normally try and bring something to the conversation, but you pretty much hit everything on the head. Well,
let's go with this one. What do you think about the contractual things that they still have in the pipeline? What games do you think he was talking about there?
Those ones is going to be interesting, because I think, as it's rightly said, those are going to be the obvious contract obligations. So maybe there is something for Skyrim or something along the lines of ESO. Those aspects are going to be still kept. It's a tough one, because this agreement was done a year ago. So I suspect any contracts of games was probably done almost prior to that. So you could be looking at anything back by 2 years, unless, of course, there was something. I mean, games themselves are generally, the obligations and contracts are normally written up to around the 2 to 3 year mark. Again, I could be completely wrong here, but they're normally set well in advance. And this really hasn't kicked in until, as you said, the actual agreement has been done today. So I suspect they've probably had contractual obligations to make maybe 2 years ago. But anything what was in the works potentially from 2 years onwards is viable in my head. I mean, that could be brand new. I think there's still some brand new titles that will be coming out potentially this year and maybe running into next, that will still be under contractual obligations by other platforms. I probably don't think you'll probably be looking at maybe 2024. That will dissipate.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's still a little way off, isn't it? Pux, there were rumours that PlayStation were trying to get Starfield to be a PlayStation exclusive. That obviously didn't come to fruition, as we know. But do you think that Starfield may come on PlayStation 5? Do you think that the ink has dried on that particular deal, and that Bethesda had agreed for it to come to the PlayStation platform before Microsoft approached them?
I do wonder, because I know we keep hearing about contractual obligations, and I think for the most part we're all considering, they're obviously talking about Ghostwire Tokyo and Deathloop, but then maybe the assumption. That is the assumption, and I think it's a correct assumption for the most part. But then maybe reading into it a bit more, maybe behind the scenes there has been a deal which has maybe taken place to say, even if it's not exclusive, because I think we can all rest assured that's definitely not happening, but maybe Starfield is actually coming to the PlayStation 5 as well as Xbox. That may have already been in the pipeline and the plans on Bethesda's side, potentially. I'm not sure, but I think it's definitely possible that Starfield could be multi-platform. Not just because of the fact that, as you say, we've had this kind of talks before about, being on Game Pass. Anyone can download it, and obviously, and it's good business for Microsoft in terms of where revenue comes from. But at the same time, there's, not everyone's on Game Pass yet, and there's still a massive market of players that are on the PlayStation side of the fence. So I think to a degree, maybe it's still in Microsoft's best interest to keep some of these bigger titles multi-plat potentially, and maybe that's what they're talking about when they say we still have contractual obligations. So I'm wondering if maybe, as I say, maybe Starfield will be multi-plat. It's too hard to call until we see an announcement, but it has got me wondering if that is maybe in the pipelines.
Well, the next trailer that comes out for Starfield, I think everywhere. I think Scott mentioned this. Everyone's going to be looking for their little PlayStation logo at the very end. Perhaps. Yes. We'll come to you next, Scott, if that's okay. So, what's your take on Starfield do you think? See, in my mind, and I certainly don't work in the business. I am a purveyor, and I enjoy the business, but I don't work in the business. But in my mind, Sony go and knock on the door of Bethesda, saying, "Oh, could we please have Starfield exclusive to our platform, and here's a big bag of cash." Bethesda at that point either say yes or no, and if it's no, I think perhaps the next deal on the table, and perhaps Luke might be able to correct me on this, is that I'm wondering if Sony then might go for a marketing right or a marketing deal. So I'm kind of intrigued to know whether there's sort of marketing deals going on as well that's kind of set in stone to a certain degree. But Scott, what's your take on what was meant by contractual things?
I think a lot of people have overcomplicated that statement a little bit personally. I think the obvious answer, and I think it just boils down to simply Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo. Personally, I think the only exception to that is maybe Indiana Jones, just because that was obviously, again, that was announced before the acquisition was completed, so they could easily go back and just say, well,
but so was Starfield. This is the thing. I mean, surely Starfield's further into development than Indiana Jones.
Absolutely. I'm more thinking from a contractual standpoint. I don't think.
Oh, you've gone quiet.
Oh, apologies. Is that better?
That's right. Yeah, that's better.
Apologies. In Starfield's case, obviously Bethesda own the IP, everything related to Starfield, so there aren't any contractual obligations to anyone, in my opinion. Obviously, that's a very uninformed view, I guess, in some respects. I don't obviously have any or much knowledge of the inner workings of these types of deals, but with the Indiana Jones contract, I imagine there will be some sort of contract, obviously, between Bethesda and is Indiana Jones Warner?
No, it's LucasArts.
Lucas, apologies. Thank you very much. There will be a contract between them that will stipulate which platforms it will release on, most likely. Similar to, if you think back to recently, MLB appearing on Xbox, despite being technically developed by a first-party Sony studio, because the contract with the MLB, when they most recently renewed that, the MLB wanted it to be also on Xbox, obviously, so they could get more sales, essentially. So contractually, Sony were obliged to release MLB also on Xbox this year. There may be a case of that with Indiana Jones, but I don't necessarily know if that's going to be the case. And it does come down to people are going to be eagle-eyed on those trailers, just looking for those, or even at the beginning of the trailer. Obviously, Microsoft do like the whole exclusive tag before the trailer actually shows. People will be looking out for that as well. But yeah, I think it's Deathloop, Ghostwire Tokyo, and maybe Indiana Jones, depending on what was agreed with Lucas before that was announced. And obviously they can then just go back and go, well, look, Indiana Jones, that agreement was made with Lucas before we were involved. So of course we're going to stand by that contract. But Starfield, I'm pretty confident will be exclusive to Xbox and PC. They've not announced any platforms for it just yet. I think if Sony had the marketing for that, I think we probably would have known about it by now.
It sounds a lot cheaper than obviously getting a game solely on your platform. So it's probably the sort of thing Microsoft would be able to pay Sony off with, I guess, if that were the case.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could argue that Microsoft would have, deep enough pockets that they could have paid Sony off with Deathloop and Ghostwire if they wanted to as well. Obviously, they didn't want to go down that route, and arguably you could say there could be something similar for Starfield. The only thing that I would say maybe about Starfield is it is rumored to potentially be released in 2021 at the end of this year. Now, if that has been developed and it's that far along in development, and it's already more or less done, well, I guess 4.5 years worth of development time it will have been, I imagine, by now, then maybe Microsoft just go, well, look, we don't want to throw all that work away that we've done on getting over the PlayStation. So maybe there's an element there, but I don't think that would be contractual. I think that would just be a decision that they'll make to not maybe waste any work or development resource that Bethesda put into that game over the past 4.5 years. So, but if I was to put any money on it, I'd say Starfield was exclusive. And yes, as we said, we'll be referring to Deathloop and Ghostwire when it comes to contractual obligations.
Okay, no, that kind of makes sense, and I guess I'm of a similar opinion, to be honest. Luke, are you of the same opinion? I'm a little bit curious as to why they perhaps didn't buy Ghostwire and Deathloop from Sony and pay them off? Do you think they just didn't want to sort of upset the fans that they're actually trying to get onto Game Pass ultimately?
I think it's more a technical point, which is part technical point, part reputational. Which is the first one is we don't know the contents of those contracts, and that those deals to bring those particular games exclusive to PlayStation 5 for a certain amount of time. There may not be any capacity in those sorts of contracts to actually, have one party just, terminate and pay off the other. It may be unless there's some kind of random event that stops the contract from happening. Otherwise you just go through with it. So that's the first point. And usually with sort of those kind of deals, you wouldn't see those sorts of clauses within them. So there wouldn't just be capacity for Microsoft to say, you know what, actually we don't fancy doing this anymore. But the second reason is more of a reputational one, which is that if Microsoft start going around and saying, well, you've entered into this, we've had these contracts with people. When I say we, it's Microsoft Bethesda now. But actually, we're not kind of that interested in doing that anymore. So we're just going to, pay you off or get rid of it. It doesn't bode well for Microsoft commercially to do that. It's not good business. And so, and it's a comment that Phil made that, he wants to honor the contracts, right? He wants to honor the obligations because it's very important that companies are seen to do that, particularly Microsoft, because if they just start getting rid of contracts if they can, why would you enter into one with Microsoft at the drop of the hat? Actually, we're not that interested in doing this anymore. So I think there's two reasons for that. And that's certainly, my experience in those sorts of things. So on a very basic level. So I think that's why. I think in terms of Starfield, I think I mostly agree with yourself and Scott on that. And I think that I would be surprised if Starfield came to another platform other than the Game Pass platforms, let's call them, because it never had any platforms announced for it. It's never been confirmed for any platform really, other than that it was coming to next generation platforms. I think as Scott says, we probably would have heard about Sony having some sort of deal for marketing or even it being on a Sony platform by now. And I think if you're Microsoft, and even if the game has been developed for PlayStation 5, but you have no obligation to release it on that platform, I think you're quite comfortable in getting rid of that version at this point, because ultimately, it's a bit of wasted work, but the benefits of keeping that as an ecosystem exclusive, let's say, I think far outweigh the wasted work on a PlayStation 5 version, because it's a big game. It's going to be a big game. Everybody knows who Bethesda are. Everybody knows, the minute you slap Starfield with a line that says from the makers of Fallout and Elder Scrolls, people are going to pay attention to that. And Microsoft are right in the big growth period of trying to attract people to Game Pass, and that's a game that will particularly if it releases this year, significantly increase that. So I think they'd be very comfortable dropping a PS5 version, even if it's being developed, provided there's no obligation to release it on that platform, which at this point I don't think there is. I'd be surprised if there was a PS5 version, and I think as Scott said, everybody's going to be looking at those trailers when they come out to see the little logos and to see what happens with them.
I think a key thing that Luke's just mentioned there as well is about the announced platforms. Obviously, Microsoft had precedent with the likes of the Outer Wilds. I know there was contractual obligations with Private Division there, but even games like Wasteland 3, who they in XR released Wasteland 3 after the acquisition, that still came to PlayStation as well. But obviously that had previously been announced for PlayStation. And Luke raises actually a really, really good point about reputation and how that can be damaged. If that game previously been announced for one platform, then Microsoft simply turned around and said, nah, you guys can't get it anymore. That really wouldn't be a particularly good look. And Microsoft do seem to be in a place where they want to look like the good guys.
Yeah.
Well,
Even
let's
if you
not
go
be
back
under
to
any
the
illusion,
games.
though, because, surely it's the PlayStation guys. They want to get onto the Game Pass platform because I guess if you're an Xbox guy, chances are you've got Game Pass. So it's like you say, I think the whole Series S and Game Pass is to entice the PlayStation players over, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with that. And there could even be an argument where you say, look, if you release one game on PlayStation and the next one's exclusive. So if Wasteland 4 is exclusive, then the people on PlayStation who played that game might come across. We still got games, like Psychonauts 2 that'll be coming to PlayStation later this year as well. But again, that was previously announced for PlayStation when what's Tim Schafer's team called again?
Double Fine.
Double Fine.
Thank you
Fine,
very
yeah.
much. Yeah, before Double Fine were required, they had already announced it for PlayStation. So I think that announced platforms is actually a really, really key point because, as far as we're aware, Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield haven't been announced for any platforms. They've just been announced as existing, essentially. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's, I think most people are of a similar opinion, I guess, particularly if you're an Xbox fan as well. I think we've all kind of interpreted it a very similar way. So that does mean that Phil has kind of got the message across. Couldn't be too explicit because obviously perhaps they're not ready to share information. And, there's still rumors that there are games yet to be announced yet as well. So that's quite interesting. Pucks, have we caught up with the chat?
Pretty much. I think I've got two saved here from earlier from O'Connor Xbox News Today, who says Jim states he knows nothing about if those games will come to PlayStation, but he does lie a lot, is one of the comments. Followed up with, but what about Bethesda being their own publisher, so they don't need as many contracts to put on certain systems? Not sure on this, though.
Yeah, that's a little bit of an unknown, isn't it, around the publishing side of Bethesda and what happens next.
I think from a publishing perspective, I think the way it's going to work, and I believe they have talked about this, is essentially you've got Xbox Game Studios, XGS, that is managed by Matt Booty. Bethesda and their development studios aren't going to be part of Xbox Game Studios. They aren't going to report into Matt Booty. Essentially, Bethesda Softworks is going to be sort of like an adjacent publisher that report into Phil as head of Xbox. So Bethesda Softworks as a publisher will still exist and will still continue to publish the games that ZeniMax development studios create. I think that's how it's going to work. And I believe they have talked about that. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially, they're still going to exist as a publisher, at least for the foreseeable future, and will continue to publish their games as Bethesda Softworks, not as Xbox Game Studios.
There's still a couple of game studios as well that are kind of the two mobile ones. I can't remember them off the top of my head. I'm hoping you guys. That's it, Alpha Dog.
I can't remember.
Roundhouse? Is it Roundhouse?
Yeah, that's the one.
They're quite intriguing to me as well because they seem to be under a veil at the moment of actually what they're up to and doing. But it'd be interesting to see what they come out with. Let's move on. And we'll come to you first, Removable Santa, if that's okay. So, we had 20 Bethesda titles drop into Game Pass. I was going to say back into Game Pass because a lot of them have been in there already. But I've just flashed up the list on the screen. What are your personal favourites and what are your least favourites out of that list?
Definitely for me, it's going to be the ones that this is a strange one because I've almost played every single one of them, as a best thing. But definitely The Evil Within and Prey. Those were two that I never really got round time to actually spend enjoying them. And The Evil Within and Prey have got very good ratings. So spotting the ones that I haven't been able to play is just a great opportunity for me to just go, wow. This is a game that was I think what I'm seeing a lot on the social media is actually Prey seems to be getting a hell of a lot of resurgence and praise. And a lot of people seem to be saying this was kind of a game that kind of got bypassed by a lot of people. It's almost like it's being reintroduced to the gaming population again. There's a lot of people saying, wow, this is actually a really good game. I didn't appreciate this. It's one of those things I think they got kind of missed or overshadowed due to its release at the time. And I think now it's kind of getting a little resurgence for it. And it's definitely one that I'm looking forward to playing. But a majority of these I've kind of grown up with, I've played with, I've thoroughly spent my time enjoying them. it's just good that they're on there for everybody. For those who haven't played them, those who want to play them, they can now enjoy these titles. And let's be honest, these titles aren't small, are they? They're, majority titles are good 30+ hour games for you to enjoy. So you're not getting you're not getting something that's like going to be over and done in a weekend. That's a hell of a lot of content there that's just been dropped. And if you've never played a couple of these before, you've got a perfect opportunity to do so now.
Well, I'm guilty of not playing The Evil Within, so that's certainly on my list.
It's
my
weird,
surprise,
isn't it?
it is. Yeah, I tried Prey. I tried getting into Prey a few times, and then one time I actually got a little bit further in, but I think another game came along and I kind of gave up on it. So perhaps I need to go back. But my surprise out of this was Rage 2. I absolutely had a blast in Rage 2. I absolutely loved it. It's bizarre. And I really liked Youngblood as well. I know lots of people don't like Youngblood, but Pux and I played it. We did a stream on it, actually. I really loved that game. So I'm in a minority. Probably my game, my best game ever, one of them is probably Oblivion. I absolutely adore that game. So it's nice to see that on there. Luke, what's your best game on there? What's your least favourite game on there?
That's least favorite game. Is a hard one. There's a lot of good ones. Least favorite game is probably 76 because that's dreadful.
Okay.
But there's a lot on there that I really love. So I'm just looking at it now and just trying to think which one is probably my favorite. I mean, getting rid of like the old historic games, and what I mean by that is stuff like Oblivion and Skyrim and those sorts of games that are a little kind of outdated now. Skyrim less so, but certainly Oblivion. Dishonored 2 is a phenomenal game. It's a fantastic game.
Couldn't get into that.
Yeah, me too.
Well,
Strange,
I'm going to leave now because that's just
actually. Let me ask you a question if you don't mind, mate. Because I can't remember who it was. Somebody posted on Twitter over the weekend. Yeah, I think it might have been Gavin Stevens, and I was like, yes, that's why. And it's just the controls feels like there's a little bit of input delay on what you're doing that kind of just doesn't make it feel tight, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like I want it, and that was it. And I think I'm going to go back to the original Dishonored because that's getting the
first
FPS
one was
boost.
amazing.
Yeah,
which may help with that, I think.
I was about to say because I played Dishonored 2 on PlayStation 4 Pro, and I completely agree that and it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I assume it was the same for the Xbox One X, that game was 30 FPS. And
yes, they were.
Yeah, it's 30 FPS, and yes, it does have a little bit of its own input lag that can make it feel a little bit delayed, even within a 30 FPS buffer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and I remember certain other games in the past, not Bethesda games. I remember one of the Tomb Raiders did this as well. It might be in Rise or something like that, where it had this weird bit of latency. So totally agree. If you play Dishonored 2 at 60 FPS, and I hope they'll update it for that, FPS boost or something like that, because I jumped back on it today on PC at 4K 60, and it's an incredible playing game. It feels incredible, but I think much of that has to do with the 60 FPS element of it. And I think I was willing back in the day to push past the little bit of latency because I just loved the game that much. But I totally agree with that. So yeah, but I'd highly recommend that. Prey is another unbelievable game, and I'd really recommend getting the DLC for that. I don't think it's included in this, which is called Moon Crash, which turns it into or is kind of a separate element of the game, which is effectively a roguelike. So it's you go on a run and you're trying to escape basically a lunar base. And if you die, you start back at the beginning, but you can upgrade your abilities. We've all played those sorts of games, so we know what they're like. But it's just brilliant, and it's a clever game, and there's a theme to all of this, I suppose, which is they're all developed by Arcane, who are just an incredible developer.
So what's your excitement levels for Deathloop? Because like you said,
high.
Yeah, well, I'm not a huge Dishonored fan, but when I saw Deathloop, I absolutely want to play that game. I'm
Yeah.
really
Me
excited
too,
for that
me
game.
too.
I think what they've done with Deathloop is, and looking at it and having played obviously Prey and Dishonored, Deathloop looks like they've taken the kind of combat of Dishonored, but they've really amped it up. So it looks extremely quick and extremely brutal, and looks not necessarily less methodical than Dishonored is, but it's more of a kind of fast, engaging combat. And I think part of that is because that game clearly runs at 60 FPS as well. So I can't wait for that. And it looks like they've taken kind of all of the elements of Prey and Dishonored and rolled them into this kind of dream game, which just looks brilliant. It just looks fantastic. So those would be my main games. Weirdly, the one I downloaded and I was playing yesterday, and this, out of all of these, this was the first one I downloaded when they came on, was Doom 3. And I downloaded it because I remember playing it back in the day, and I didn't really like it. And Doom 3 has a bit of a mixed history for this, because it's not really the Doom sequel people were looking for back in the day, but on its own, it's a unique, and it's actually a good game. It's just not a classic Doom game. But I loaded it up and I played it on the Series X, and it looks fantastic. Like, it looks so it's running 4K, it's running 60 FPS and auto HDR, and it looks so impressive. Even though it's so old, obviously it looks like a game of its time to some extent, but I was just really blown away about how fluid and how vibrant it looks. So I'd really recommend.
Isn't it a joy when all of those things come together?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's phenomenal how they can transform. All of those things together can transform a game that, by all accounts, should look terrible now. Right? It shouldn't look really that good, but it does. So yeah, I'd recommend that. And then because I know this is taking a little bit long, but people need to play Doom Eternal because it's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's an incredible game. And also, apparently, the next element of the DLC is going to drop this week. So look forward to that as well.
No, that's pretty cool. In fact, has anyone noticed a game that's not here? That's not the entire lineup. Obviously, we haven't got Fallout 3 on there.
Is it
Is that because of the DLC issues?
Don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. Don't know. Perhaps it's coming. I don't know. But yeah, Scott, what's your favourite?
Yeah, I think the Evil Within 2's missing as well, isn't it? I think there's a second one of those.
Isn't the Wolfenstein sequel missing as well?
Yes,
yeah, Wolfenstein 2's not here either.
Yeah,
it was on the service, got taken off a few months ago, and it's not back here, which I found a bit strange.
Well, perhaps they're leaving some room for improvement a little bit further down the line. But there's something else I want to talk about. But yeah, Scott, what's your favourite out of that particular?
Yeah,
lineup?
very very quickly then. So the two main games, I think, and the general consensus is the games I'm looking forward to are very much Prey and the Evil Within. The Evil Within because the Medium kind of got me excited for horror games in a way that I haven't really. I know people say the Medium's not really a horror game, but that type of game more than probably I've ever been in that sort of genre. So looking forward to checking that out. And Prey as well. I've not had a chance to play that, and people often refer that as kind of a really underrated gem that didn't really get the acknowledgement it deserved. And that is also one of the games that's getting the FPS boost as well, which should hopefully be coming this week. So that's definitely a game that's been added. But the one I've actually started playing since, and to be fair, this has been in Game Pass a little while. I know it's in that list, but as Elder Scrolls Online, I actually booted that up last night for the first time in a long time. And there's just something about, and you could say this about Morrowind or Oblivion or Skyrim, there's just kind of something about the way those games are. I picked a mage and I was just casting spells. It was just fun to do.
It's the music that gets it for me.
So and I know they've updated that a hell of a lot. I did play it at launch. I didn't quite get into it, but that's one I've started up. That game could really benefit from FPS boost. I will say that at least, but I'm excited to try and give that a shot. I know it's a MMO essentially, but a lot of people seem to praise it for it's essentially just a really good solo Elder Scrolls game, and the same with that Oblivion or Skyrim is you don't have to play it with people. So I'm excited to get into that. So that's one I've actually started. So yeah.
It's a bit nuts, though, isn't it? Because like, I was like you, I picked it up at first because obviously I loved Oblivion and the Elder Scrolls series. But I went back to it fairly recently myself, and everyone's got a horse with a pet flying around, and they've got like glowing armor, and it's like, whoa, this is a bit crazy.
Yeah, but even in the starting areas last night, it was still fairly populated. So, there must have been either people starting new characters or a lot of people new to the game, maybe because of this announcement that maybe they thought they wanted to check it out, or maybe they're new subscribers to Game Pass. Yeah, there was a lot of people in the starting area that I was in. I only got level 5. I was only on it for maybe an hour or so, it was fairly late, but it was good to see sort of new people joining. I think they actually just maybe announced recently they hit 18 million players or something like that on it as well. So it's still doing quite well. So hopefully that does get the FPS boost patch. I think that type of game would really benefit from it. So looking forward to playing a little bit more of that, and then definitely Prey once that gets the boost patch as well.
Fantastic. Well, Pux, one thing that I haven't brought up yet, out of 20 titles, I think there's 5 that aren't on every platform, which is quite impressive because that obviously means there's 15 that are. So we've got obviously console, xCloud, and PC. That's phenomenal. And I think, as much as we said at the top that, a lot of these have already been on Game Pass, I don't think they've been on Game Pass and available on all of those platforms. So that in itself is pretty amazing. What's your favorite game? And what do you think the future for, there's still quite a lot of scope in Game Pass for them to actually bring a lot of games to other platforms in the Game Pass ecosystem, as it were.
Yeah, well, to start off with, I guess, what you were saying before, I think it's quite easy as an Xbox console player to look at these and go, yeah, this is great, but the majority of these are already on Game Pass. What are they talking about? But the fact is, actually, most of these weren't available on PC. like Fallout 4 and Skyrim, for example.
Doom Eternal, I don't think was it?
It was a couple of months ago, actually. That was on there. Wolfenstein Youngblood is, but again, Old Blood and the New Blood, is it? They weren't on there. Again, Skyrim wasn't on there. Fallout 4, New Vegas, they weren't on PC. Fallout 76 is or was, but I think this particular one also had some extra DLC add-on or something that came for free, I believe. But again, the Dishonoured's as well and all the other Dooms. So, as you say, if not from a console perspective, you look at these and go, not many here is new. But yeah, definitely from someone who plays on PC quite a lot, like, this is fantastic news. Like, oh my god, I can play all these FPS games with a mouse and keyboard, no problem, Like, I know you can plug stuff into Xbox, but most people have them integrated into a TV unit, so it's not necessarily the best way to, you don't have the best setup for a mouse and keyboard. So if you like playing on PC, this is fantastic news. But in terms of my favourites, I know you know this, but seeing Oblivion on here just makes me feel great. I mean, I've got the disc behind me in a drawer, but just knowing I can just go ahead and download it is good fun. Fallout 4, I think I'm really looking forward to diving into again at some point, and I think this is maybe what you want to bring up soon. But again, a number of these titles have FPS boost. Now,
well, let's talk about that.
Attached to them, yeah, sure. So a number of the titles, I do have a list next to me, actually. So let me just quickly scroll to it.
I've got Dishonored, the Definitive Edition.
Yeah, then we've got the Skyrim Special Edition, Fallout 4, Fallout 76, and Prey all have the FPS boost now added to them as well. So I know when we first saw about the FPS boost lineup, and we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, we was asking about, this game, FPS boost as a feature was shown off with Fallout 4. Where the hell is it? Why have we not seen it yet? And obviously they've clearly now been waiting for this day to come up. So that's one of the reasons I'm looking forward to jumping into that again, because I played Fallout 4 on the the base PlayStation 4, so that ran at about 30 frames a second. Again, it's a relatively slow-paced game, so you can't notice it, but I don't know how it was on Xbox One, but in heavier areas, and when you've got a lot of mess and explosions going on, like, it can drop frames quite severely. So not only playing the game again on newer and more powerful hardware, but also being able to play it at 60, I'm really looking forward to diving in and playing again. So I think that's one of my main ones. I won't go too into it.
What's your favourite game out of that lot, though?
Oh, God.
It's not easy, is it?
It's not. I think Oblivion, for the nostalgia's sake, I think is on there. Because one of the things I did, I actually booted up my 360 a few days ago at this announcement, because I thought I want to dive into these at some point, but I never enabled cloud saving on my original 360. So I had to boot it all up again and then move my saves to the cloud and then through my Series X. I can then download them, it all syncs up, and it actually worked really nicely. But so that was quite a weird nostalgia trip, just booting up the 360 home menu. But but I think Oblivion for me, mainly from the nostalgia. If I had to only choose one, Dishonored, I would like to say Dishonored, but I remember playing the demo originally on the 360. I liked the demo so much back then, I bought the special edition of Dishonored 1. But then I never actually finished it because I got most of the way through the story and then kind of didn't really feel it. And then I just kind of stopped playing one day. Similar to the reasons you guys mentioned.
Did that come with tarot cards?
It did, and I have it behind me.
yeah.
Yes,
I have that edition. I've still got the tarot cards.
You still have it? I've got. I think mine.
Yeah.
I don't think mine are open. So if it's worth a bit, I might have to stick it on eBay. But
That might be worth about 60p nowadays.
yeah, it's true. But I have that edition. Like the game, I don't want to say I didn't like it. I wasn't into it enough that I haven't yet played Dishonored 2. So now's a good time for me to jump in. I have Doom Eternal on my PC. I'm still playing that and loving that. But I did also download the original Doom, just to give that a go, and it's just great fun to go back to an old school game, and actually it's still fun to play despite the sharp pixelated graphics and pretty bare bones 3D environments to today's standards, but it's such good fun just to go back and play.
Absolutely. How are we doing in the chat? Pucks, is there much coming in? Chat, let us know what your favourite games from the 20 that dropped the other day would be great to know, and what platform, just out of interest.
I've got 2 comments here. One from Wakanda, who says, the selection was great, as a lot of them are now available on PC, as we've just mentioned. And Parksy1972 in the chat. Hello, Parksy. And they say that they've just started playing Wolfenstein: The Old Blood, which is another one I want to jump into. Yeah, I played a bit of that around a friend's house a couple of years ago. But again, I've never finished it properly, but I remember absolutely loving playing it. It was just something about the way the gunplay and the way the movement works. It's just so fluid. It's similar to Doom in a way in my eyes, but it's obviously not quite as fast paced. But yeah, that is definitely another one I want to go back to. And again, my first real introduction to playing and completing a Wolfenstein game was Wolfenstein 2 when that was on Game Pass. So I now need to go back and play the Old Blood and the New Blood.
It's so fluid, isn't it? I think it's the motion blur and stuff that they do, or per object motion blur, but it's so fluid, or it looks fluid.
It just flows. Even the in-game animations as well. When the characters are right up in your face, and they, you can kind of see all the facial animations and stuff. Oh, it's just something about how they've done the game, which, I really need to dive back in. This is what it's telling me. And we, as a pair, we need to actually go back and properly play Youngblood again, I think, at some point soon.
Yes. Yeah, I've completed it once. I'm more than happy to complete that again. We'll live stream it, perhaps. That's a lot of fun.
That'd be fun.
I do like that game.
But that's
that's
the
cool.
chat so far.
Yeah, no, well, what a week this has been. My God. It's a week we knew were coming, and it's a week that finally arrived. I think it was always in the back of my mind that, the deal might fall through and the EU weren't going to allow it and just make things awkward. But it's nice that it's gone through, that they've done their chat and they've qualified some of the questions that were being asked. So that's pretty cool. Scott, come to you first on the next topic, if you don't mind. But before we do, thank you, chat. Thank you for being here. Fun Speculation, welcome, my friend. Pixel Slapper, thank you for being here. Parksy, Wakanda XNT, guys, you rock. You're the regulars. Thank you for being here. Dragon Wolf, my goodness me, I'm scrolling up. Black Eyed Dog, guys, thank you very much for being here. Yeah, let us know what your favourite games were. Scott, Square Enix presents. March the 18th, which is that Thursday?
Thursday, yeah.
Thursday.
Is it? Yeah.
So there's a world premiere of Life is Strange, Outriders, Marvel Avengers, Tomb Raider 25th edition, Just Cause on mobile, which surprises me because Just Cause isn't the easiest game to run even on consoles. And Balan Wonderworld. What are you most excited for the Square Enix event?
So it's funny you couldn't be first flat, because if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't really care for this conference at all. There's not an awful lot on there that is really exciting. I think the big one, not necessarily for me, but I know for the sort of wider game community, a lot of people are very much excited for Life is Strange 3. I do have the Life is Strange games in my back catalogue, and after playing Tell Me Why last year, I actually do want to get into them, because that was sort of an introduction to that type of game or that genre that I hadn't really played in the past. So I am planning on getting to them at some point, but because I've not played them, I don't really have much affinity for that franchise at the moment. But I know there's a lot of excitement for Life is Strange 3. E3. Outriders is the game out that list I'm personally most excited for, but I don't think there's anything that they're going to be able to show outside of maybe this rumored Game Pass announcement, which we can get onto maybe. There's not too much they can say about Outriders that is going to excite me really, because I'm already going to purchase the game. I'm going to play day one because I really enjoyed the demo. And then looking at the rest of it, Marvel's Avengers, I've got very little interest in. Tomb Raider, I've played those Tomb Raider games, and the rumor is the sort of the 25th anniversary collection, which is, I believe, is just going to be a collection of the most recent trilogy. And then we talked about Balan Wonderworld maybe a month or two ago, and I still think that game looks truly awful. Apologies for anyone who might like it. So not an awful lot in there that's getting me too excited. But Life is Strange, I think, is good. And I think what's good for Square Enix is obviously people are looking for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, and obviously more information on Final Fantasy 16, as well as things like Project Athia. And I think if they were to save something like Life is Strange 3 to maybe E3, it might get overshadowed by some of those bigger titles that are likely to appear. At the same time. So yeah, that's where I'll tune in, because I'm always interested. You know, they might sneak in a surprise or two in there as well. You never know. Nintendo recently did that with Splatoon 3, so I'll be tuning in to see what they've got to say. But I think, yeah, let's say pick of the bunch is Outriders for me, but I know I'm already picking that game up.
Okay, no, that kind of makes sense. Luke, Just Cause Mobile, I'm guessing there will not be any explosions or any sort of physics going on.
No, because it seems like it might be a text adventure game or something like that, because I don't know how they're going to get it to run on mobile. But yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as Scott here. Like, unless you're going to talk to me about Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 or Project Athia or Final Fantasy 16, I'm not really interested. Because again, on Outriders, I enjoyed the demo, and it's one that I'll pick up. You don't need to show me anything more on that, particularly if the teasers are correct from Xbox about that coming to Game Pass. You know, it's going to be picked up anyway via that service. So yeah, excited for that, but I don't need to see any more on it. Marvel's Avengers, there's nothing you could really do with that game other than redevelop it for another 5 years that would attract me to it. And yeah, I don't really like these type of events, because I can't see them. I can't see many surprises coming out of it, and I appreciate them being upfront and saying, "Here's everything we're going to show off." Here's the kind of show. And I think that's good for people who are then interested in what they are going to show, but it's not. It doesn't get you hyped like a direct does, or a state of play, or anything like that. But I do think that they're going to save all their big stuff for the E3 period. It's some separate showcase where all of that can be shown off, and this is just to give some of their lesser known titles to some extent a bit of a piece of the spotlight, so to speak. So Life is Strange never really interested me.
No, me neither.
But I know it's a beloved franchise. I don't actually know if Don't Nod will be developing that though, because I think they're kind of gone from Square Enix in terms of the in terms of the arrangement they had.
I've already said they're not. I believe someone from Don't Nod came out maybe a month or two ago and said like the Life is Strange franchises with Square. I can't remember the name of I think it's the developer that did Before the Storm, which wasn't done by Don't Nod. They're basically handling the franchise going forward.
Yeah. So good. That's great for people who are into Life is Strange, for sure. Balan Wonderworld, I played the demo and it was. Well, I won't get that time back. Is what I say about that. It was not good. And I think that's about it. Like there's just nothing there that's really exciting me, and maybe they will pull something out of the hat and show something off as a surprise, and I probably will have it on in the background, but it just doesn't doesn't get me going.
No, and to be honest, like you say, I think this is the pre-E3 show, isn't it? Like you say, this is the ones they're getting out of the way before hopefully they're being overshadowed by other stuff at E3.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that about Balan Wonderworld. Perhaps I've got the nostalgia of Nights into Dreams. I mean, don't get me wrong, I didn't love the game, and I was getting quite frustrated with it. But I liked I guess the nostalgia that it was conjuring up in my mind at the time. Although I know Puck mentioned about the sort of the one button action. It is very, very dated, the control method, which I'm a little bit, I think it was probably that I was a bit disappointed about, actually. But Removable Sanity, anything on there? Tomb Raider 25th anniversary? Marvel's Avengers, I mean, what can they do with that other than write it off?
Free to play.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Yeah,
you could do that.
That's the only way I can see this. I know some people are still playing it. I know some people are still enjoying it. But right now, the only way I really think they can get the numbers back up would make it free to play, and that kind of if that, to be honest with you, if it's played free to play, I might even try it out. I played the demo. It's like, yeah, right, but I could see where how grindy it was going to get, and maybe if free to play, it might actually bump up the numbers. Balan Wonderworld. I'm glad that someone else actually played the demo, because you know what? I'm going to agree with you there. To me, it's like a modern take of a old retro styled game.
It's made by the same people who made
this is the retro.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they had in terms of the actual aesthetics and the actual gameplay and the button pressing. It's like they've said, we are not moving from the 80s or 90s. This is it, and we're just going to make the graphics a lot better and put it into today's generation. And if you're a real retro fan, this will appeal to you. But as you say, to the more modern day fans, the modern day takes and the evolution of the control system in gaming in general, it's such an old throwback that I think it doesn't sit well. It's great for your real hardcore retro fans. They will love this. I think that's where it's for. But for modern day gamers, I think they'll be like, what is this? And I played it. I didn't dislike it, but it was very much, this is.
Nope.
Again, for me, I go with Outriders again. I played the beta. It's a great game. I actually really am. But I am intrigued at seeing this mobile game they mentioned, just to see, because emulators these days are just crazy. So, in my head, maybe I'm being a little child here. Maybe they might actually be able to get something working that's remotely decent and playable, because Just Cause was like, how was that? It was 2000 and... Is that the 2000? That was the first one we were talking about, isn't it? Or is it? Are they saying Just Cause?
Good question. I don't know. I don't know if it's a remake of the first one.
I thought it was the first one.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just Cause on mobile. It might be a different game. I'm guessing, like Luke said, it could be even a different platform or a different sort of format. But
yeah, I think it's like a.
It's intrigued me. Put it this way, it's like, really, it was like, okay, well, let's see what this is going to be done. But as you rightly said, this is going to be a prelude to the E3 event, and this is just like, as you said, giving these games a little bit more PR than probably what it was getting. It'll be. I'm intrigued. There is some little games, as I said, like Marvel's Avengers. What they're going to do with that? Unless it's free to play, what they're going to do with that? And again, it's like the Outriders is one of those things I think I was going to get anyway, and maybe the mobile game. There is some there that are going to be interesting to view. I'm just going to be seeing what they come out with. Maybe it'll be just a bland show, and it'll be all what we thought it'll be. Maybe it'll just like Marvel Avengers, here's a new DLC, and we're like, oh, okay. I don't know. There are a couple of things in there that have just made me go, okay, let's. Are you throwing stuff against the wall and hoping it will stick, or have you got something up your sleeves?
Yeah. Okay. No, and to be honest, I was surprised to see this event. I mean, I don't remember there being quite so many events, at this time of the year. And I know we live in a slightly different world than we have previously. These sort of digital events that are coming out, they seem to be a lot easier to sort of produce and stuff. And just a little bit surprised to see these. Pucks, where are you on Balan Wonderworld? Which side of the fence are you on?
So a couple of weeks ago, I did mention I needed to go back and replay the demo. I did do that a couple of weeks ago, I finished it, and I'm kind of with Luke on this one. As someone who absolutely loves platformers, it's that one button mechanic just for me it just feels too outdated for today's standards. I want the game to do well because of its legacy in a way, but I just can't. I can see it struggling. I really hope they've they're not going to majorly tweak it. I get that, but I hope they adjust it in some way just to make it feel a bit. I don't know, just to make it feel a bit better. Like I just felt really limited, just stuck with one button for the main power up on the costume.
I don't think they're going to though. I think removable sanity is right. I think that's just that's it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I agree. I think they're going to stick with their guns. But to be fair, the one thing I did like the boss encounters. Actually, I thought they worked really well. Because there was also like a bit of a quick time mechanic with the top hat dude.
That's
kind
right.
of flies about and does a few kicking moves. You have to time his shadow with like his actual silhouette and all the rest of it. Those little parts are really good, and I found it interesting when you kind of go back to the hub world in the demo and you kind of collect all the different like yellow and red and purple gems, whatever they are, and you feed them to like these weird chick bird things.
That's right. Yeah,
it's almost like maybe a bit of a mechanic there. I say I struggled
it goes on that big circle thing, doesn't it, and opens something up.
Yes, you kind of like a big train sequence happens, and then there's a train station in the hub world, and all this other stuff appears. So I finished the demo, to be fair, and I was actually quite intrigued to see what was to come, like what the game had more to offer. But then obviously the demo ends. It's like, oh no, okay, I'm gonna have to play the real thing when it comes out.
It's a bit nuts, isn't it? It's proper nuts.
It is. It's proper. I want to say Japanese style nuts in a way, because sometimes it gets a bit out there in terms of the ideas. So. I want it to do well, but I think it will struggle. But I think it's one of those games where you need to maybe play it. Again, based on the demo specifically, you need to play those first 2 or 3 levels to then open up the rest of it. And then out of nowhere, I kind of had myself going, whoa, what's going on here? I now want to play more to see what the hell is going on, rather than being so stuck in the mechanics are garbage, and therefore I'm not going to play it anymore. But once I pushed myself past that barrier, I kind of found myself wanting more, despite not liking the controls. So I wonder what I'm looking forward to seeing what happens of it.
I was like,
your nostalgia is holding you there, regardless.
Yes, I'll try to keep it there. Yeah. Another one I want to come back to, actually, if you don't mind, is talking about this Just Cause demo, Just Cause Mobile. Sorry, because I've just been looking it up as the other guys were talking, and. One thing I am surprised to see, because it looks like a Diablo-style game, like in terms of where the camera is, like a fixed camera angle.
Again, it's a nice isometric game.
Yeah, it's on mobile. Okay. It's playing on mobile. But what I found more surprising, not only is it single-player, local multiplayer, and has PvP multiplayer, it's also developed in Unreal Engine 4, which really surprises me, because that is very much known for being quite heavy on mobile. So there aren't many...
It's going to melt your mobile, basically.
Quite possibly, yeah.
You're going to go about 20 minutes gameplay before you.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of developers either have their own in-house engine optimized for mobile, or they use the Unity engine, which is a lot more. It's less intensive on your mobile CPUs. But Unreal Engine is obviously a lot better nowadays on mobile than it was in the past. But even so, it's pretty heavy. So I'm quite interested I'm more intrigued by it just knowing that fact. Actually, just to how is it going to play and how well is it going to play as a game? Because it's coming to both Apple and Android, and it is free to play apparently. So
is it? I didn't know that bit.
I've looked at official website states it's free to play. So none of us have any reason to not try it out, but it does make me wonder.
Like my phone.
Well, yeah, I mean you still want to make calls on it, don't you? But
unless you don't crashes the moment you load it up.
Yeah. But I think mainly because of that, I'm looking forward to seeing that as well. Life is Strange, like has been said by other people on the panel. Those kind of games haven't really interested me too much. I've not really played it. I don't really have much desire to jump in anytime soon. Outriders, I'm still yet to play the demo actually, so I can't really comment on it too much. But I've heard good things from the panel and the internet in general. So much so
you like it. Yeah.
So much so that the developers even had to update the demo to stop people from farming too much for the real game. I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah. They've done it about 3 up. This is the only people I know who've updated their demo 3 times.
That's crazy, right?
They've done a lot. They've done a lot.
Really?
Pretty cool.
What are you doing? And I'm like, okay.
Really
I think it's
interesting.
because it's tied into your main game, so you can bring your progression across. So I guess any exploits or any potential, cheats you may have got through the demo, they're trying to quickly circumvent.
Yeah, I think I read something else about it as well. That
game.
depending on how much you play, I think the more you played it or went round in circles, that you kept getting like more legendary items that you carry over, as you say.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if they don't want people to, start the new game. They've got all the best stuff you can get.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because you were limited to level 7 or something. So like as soon as you play the main game, you're probably gonna get weapons and equipment that were better than the legendary stuff you got, because it was sort of lower level anyway. But yeah, they've weirdly supported that game's demo better than some developers support their actual games.
That's an interesting outlook, isn't it? Yeah, the demo is more supported than some fully fleshed out release games.
But that does give me confidence in the game as well. That people could fly are going to really. I know they've sort of reiterated it's not a games as a service, but I do imagine they'll be patching and providing updates, and there will possibly be
new
DLC
guns, new skins,
stuff. Yeah, I imagine just the way the developers handled everything about that game so far has actually given me a lot of confidence that that's a game that I want to give a shot. Even though I hadn't played the demo, I played the demo and that sort of I guess made my mind up. But there's other sort of games.
You're in for a treat. I've played the beta, and it goes on about a good 2 or 3 hours. It opens up into two different little areas after that. The storyline I was very surprised about. I was like, wow, this is kind of like a BioWare, the original when BioWare was doing good storylines. They've got some side missions in there. I was like, wow, this was a really well thought out and well done storyline. And I was like, I'm just surprised they didn't add a couple of those into the demo, because I think it would have shocked a few people a little bit more as well, because it's not just about the gameplay. There is a good storyline from what I'm seeing. I mean, from the beta, I played some of even just like these side missions. There was like a storyline there that was like kind of choked you up on one of them. It's like, wow, this is a little bit of a. I was like, wow, this is almost like an original BioWare storyline sort of stuff. What's going on here? So that's why it really got me. It's like, wow, this sounds great.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, actually, Removable Sanity, because I think you might have been on the show the last time we discussed Outriders, and I think you obviously commented on the story back then, but speaking from my experience with it, I couldn't wait to skip past the cutscenes and any of the story elements. All I wanted to do was shoot things, see numbers go up, get something that was blue, because that's all I could find. Hopefully the numbers are better the next time. But that sort of mindless, I guess, loop is something that is quite satisfying, just because the core gunplay is nice and it feels good. It's fun to use. The cutscenes and the story and things like that I wasn't really into, but that's not what I'm come to that type of game for, personally speaking. So, but yeah, either way, really looking forward to that. And like I said, just the way they've handled things, even prior to the demos, really give me confidence that people can fly, or a developer that I want to play their games and I want to see what they've got. I want to give them a chance.
I gotta be Scott. I'm exactly the same. I couldn't skip through all of the cutscenes fast enough because I just wanted to go and shoot things. I gotta be honest. Yeah. So you know what, Removable Sanity, it's quite interesting you say you really enjoyed the storyline, because I'm now starting to think that I've actually missed out, to be honest. So I might need to actually have to go back and start again.
It's strange. It was weird to me. It was the main storyline. It was like it's a standard storyline. I'm going through this. I can understand it. It was, again, what got me was this was like a side mission storyline that got me, and I was like, wow, this is just it kind of, it's like, I can't tell you too much about it because I don't want to kind of ruin it, because you're going to get into it. But let's just say you'll get to the next area and there's an old gentleman, and if you follow him and you follow his storyline, his story is kind of, wow, this is actually really good. And it's a weird one because, as you said, the main storyline, I wasn't too fussed. Yeah, it was quite enjoyable, but I actually found myself enjoying the side missions more than I did the main story. So again, it was just a shame they didn't pass this on to the main game. I think if they'd done the demo same as the beta, I think you'll have probably a lot more people talking about maybe some of the storyline missions as well.
Okay, well, that's interesting. You've opened up a new avenue for me to sort of go and have a look at that. Pucks, definitely go and play the demo, mate.
Yes, I definitely need to jump in.
Yeah.
Well, while we're on this, is Outriders the mysterious game that Xbox have been teasing? Do you think, or is it not Outriders?
Do you mean about the new mysterious game coming to Game Pass? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
I wonder. I'm not sure. I think a lot of people seem to think it could be Outriders from what I've seen online.
It's because of the anomalies thing, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Any ideas?
Mysterious signal thing. I mean, it looks. I'd be surprised if it wasn't given the tease. I mean, it literally looks like the plot of Outriders.
Anomalies also kicks in for Mass Effect, don't they?
Yeah, but what Mass Effect's coming? What would the Mass Effect game be? Do you think Legendary Edition?
No, I think it's Outriders. I think that's the only thing. If it's not Outriders, someone's made a complete arse of that tease.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the only way to put it. So
it's like you can't make it sound exactly like Outriders and then it not be Outriders at this point. Do you know what I mean? Like, and they're usually quite obvious with their teases. It's I don't think I've ever seen a tease from them that I thought, oh, it's probably that game, and then they come on and it's like Balan Wonderworld. You're like, what? Or anything like that.
That would upset everyone.
So I think I'd be a little pissed off at Outriders at this point. I think because I think it's the tease is so obvious that it surely has to be Outriders, and it makes a lot of sense for a game like Outriders to go on Game Pass because it's not the biggest. It's a new IP. It's not a service game, but it does have some elements like that. Mainly, obviously, that you can do it free play co-op, etc. So that there are comparisons, even though it isn't a service game. And there's a lot of risk with it from Square Enix's perspective as well. For that reason, that it isn't. It's not as if someone's dropping Destiny free, right? Which everybody knows if whenever that happens in 2052 or whatever, that it will be. It'll sell really well, or it'll probably freeze play at that point. But I think it makes a lot of sense for a game like that to go in there, and it's a really big get as well for Microsoft. So if they were to turn around now and say, oh well, it's I don't know what else it could be. Like it just sounds like Outriders. I'd be shocked if it wasn't.
No, fair enough. Has anyone else got any other theories, or do you agree with Luke?
Well, I'm trying to think of the title Anomalies. Well, if we're going just down based on anomalies, there could be Elite Dangerous. It could be, as I said, it could be Mass Effect. The remaster system. I'm trying to think because sometimes look at what they've done previously in some of their trailers. The most obvious things have been sitting in front of our eyes and we haven't realised it. So now I'm going, right, okay, I'm now kind of like, thinking back through everything that they probably could have announced the last, the last year or two, and go, well, what could it be? I agree. It's most likely to be Outriders. But if it isn't, it's like, then what else could it be?
Yeah, I think obviously the original Mass Effect games are already in Game Pass Ultimate technically through the
and Elite Dangerous as well.
Yeah, and Elite Dangerous is in there. And I personally think if it wasn't Outriders, I think they would have already come out and said, look, sorry, just to set expectations, this isn't Outriders. Because the thing is with this, it's a triple A title published by Square Enix that's third party coming to Game Pass day one. There's actually not an awful lot of games that do that. I can't think of too many games that launch into Game Pass that you could say are of that budget, of that size. From a publisher like Square Enix, I think Crusader Kings 3 is maybe the biggest one so far, possibly, and that obviously only came to Game Pass for PC. And so I think because the rumors started and people picked on it so quickly, I think if it wasn't Outriders, I think they would have come out and said so by now to say it's not. And I think that's maybe what Square Enix will talk about on Thursday. I think the Paradox event was on over the weekend, and they announced one of their games, Empire of Sin or something like that, is coming to Game Pass as part of that. So maybe we'll find out on Thursday as part of that. That's one thing. And you look at Square Enix, they're very they don't like risk. There's a reason why Final Fantasy 16 is exclusive to PlayStation, because by getting that money from Sony or whatever publisher from any game, they're offsetting a lot of the risk that comes with game development. And if Microsoft have given them big lump sum up front for Outriders, a game that to them is probably a bit of a risk. It's a loot game, and honestly, they don't tend to do particularly well if your name's not Destiny these days. So that does offset a lot that risk. So it kind of makes sense. And also from Microsoft's perspective, it is, I'd argue it's one of the biggest games they've had from a third-party publisher. And just the fact it's coming day one rather than 6 months down the line, I think is pretty good.
I think they've got so much momentum behind them at the moment, haven't they, Microsoft? I mean, what a week they've had.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And the cool thing... Oh, apologies.
No, go on. No, go on.
I was just going to say the cool thing is, I know this is kind of going back to the Bethesda thing, is they haven't really got started yet. If you think about it, there's still so much that we don't know about at this point. Even just
what are they going to show for E3?
Yeah, we don't know anything about Elder Scrolls 6 or Starfield or the Wolfenstein 3 or whatever any of the other Bethesda studios.
Fable, Avowed, all of it.
There's so much that we don't know about, and we're talking about this week being great, and it's exciting to be part of Xbox. But really, they're kind of just getting started, and there's still so much more that we're probably going to get excited about later this year. So I'm really, really excited for E3 this year. Really, really excited for
one game that no one seems to be talking about actively. I mean, everyone knows it's coming, but Forza 5. I mean, that's going to be a huge announcement, isn't it? And we've not heard a dicky bird about any of that, have we?
No, I can't wait for Horizon 5. I think that's rumored to be coming this year. That's one of those rumored games that Microsoft, they've been teasing that there's unannounced titles coming this year, and Horizon 5's one of them. Obviously, Horizon 4 just came to Steam this past week, and that's doing exceptionally well by the sounds of things. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. I'll be curious to see what the setting is. The settings are always the cool thing about the Horizon reveals, where they're going to go next, and maybe if they introduce any sort of, not gimmick, but how in 4 was the seasons thing. I wonder maybe what they bring that differentiates 4 to 5.
Absolutely. Pucks, where are we with in the chat? We've got some people dropping in. Toolman55, welcome. Black Eyed Dog. Oh, we've mentioned you earlier. Sorry, Black Card, Tukungula, Indy's in the chat. The Likely Lad, fantastic. Thank you guys for all being here. Pucks, any comments in the chat?
Yeah, I've seen a few regarding these anomalies thing. Black Eyed Dog asks, could it be No Man's Sky because that has anomalies, but that is already on Game Pass, so that's kind of off the cards. I think I've seen from Tuka and Gula mentions Hellblade, but that is also in Game Pass already, I believe. So. Is that correct? Am I talking
the first one?
The
first one is
right. Second, that is right. Yeah. Funnily enough, I've actually done some quick looking up on some tweets actually on the original Twitter response, and most people seem to agree that it must be Outriders. A lot of people also saying that if it is, they're going to be pretty pissed because they've put pre-orders in for the game already. So
that's not
sure how that's going to work if it is Outriders, which kind of makes me wonder: is it Outriders then? But.
Yeah. Pre-orders are pretty easy to cancel on Xbox, though. It's probably
that's true.
I think the refund policy they introduced last year or something is fairly lenient as long as you haven't played the game more than a few hours or something like that. So, yeah.
You know what though? That's a very interesting point. And chime in if you've been in this situation. But I was on the Game Pass. I was on my Xbox and went to the Game Pass app, and they've got a tab specifically for the new Bethesda titles. And I was looking through, and I'd already purchased about half of them. And I'm thinking, it almost seems like a waste. Has anyone else been caught out that sort of bought something and then it sort of appears on Game Pass in very close succession? Anyone had that?
I haven't. But the irony is, the irony is then I've played it and then gone, do you know what? I'm going to buy it anyway.
Really?
I've gone down that route, because it's not for the games that are like 15 plus. It's with those games that are like, damn, this is going to take me a hell of a lot, a long time. It's your 50, your 80 plus hour games. It's those sort of games. I'm like, actually, I want to own this, so I don't have to worry about it leaving Game Pass. Now, I know the games actually do last quite a long period of time in Game Pass, but if you're like me, I end up playing a game for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then for some reason, I'm like a magpie. I'll look at another game, and then that'll sit in my collection, and I'll go back to it again about 4 months later and continue. I know it's not, that's just me, though. So for that instance, I have done that. It's like, actually, yes, I've played it, and then I was like, do you know what, I'm going to get it, because it's those large games, and it's better to have it in my collection rather than wait and get it later down the line.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. Are we assuming that these Bethesda titles that are in Game Pass are there forever now, or do you think they're going to still sort of rotate them?
I think it makes perfect sense for them to stay there now. Much like, the other Microsoft first parties, such as Gears of War and Sea of Thieves and the others, they're always going to be on the service now. I can't see them being pulled anytime soon. It doesn't make any sense for them to be pulled. And seeing as they're now, the Bethesda studios are now owned by the same people, it makes perfect sense to me that you'd keep them on there, right? It's part of what makes your catalogue at this point in time. So I can't see any sense in rotating or removing them, because I can understand maybe rotating may feel like you're keeping things fresh, but then at the same time you're stopping people who maybe wanted to go back but not quite then, but they and then want to go to it and hold on, why have they rotated? I was going to play that now, but then people maybe then know that, what if they rotate it back in again? Then people aren't going to bother buying the damn thing. So it makes sense to me that you just keep it on. I think personally.
Have you been caught out buying a game that then sort of appears on Game Pass?
Well, technically yes, but that's because it was a few months ago and couldn't really be helped. There was a Bethesda sale on Steam a few months ago. And I took the chance to buy Skyrim and Morrowind because they were both going for about £3 each.
Oh wow!
And I thought, I'll try these at some point on PC because it's got mods and stuff. I might give it a go. But now they're both on Game Pass, and I think Skyrim, because it's a special edition as well on Game Pass, and I think that still does support mods as well, which is quite interesting. So technically I've missed out, but I've not really lost out. So technically yes, but I don't feel like I've lost out. At some point I'll go back to them, but no time soon. I've got too many other things on my plate currently.
That's the trouble, isn't it? You've got so many games that you can sort of work your way through with this. It's a fantastic problem to have.
I've just seen a funny comment in the chat as well from Tuka Ungula, who says they want Hellblade Phil Maximus Aureus Dominus Spencer, which I found quite amusing. But another thing I've got saved here from Indie Gamer, who says to book in the 26th of this month for an unannounced Xbox game showcase, guys, especially if your gaming taste aligns with mine, heard from a source of mine.
Ooh.
So something I think we should all keep in our diaries.
It's been a bit cryptic. Yeah, obviously means indie games and stuff, so that's interesting. Is that all you're going to give us, Indy? That's it? Seriously?
It's just teasing now, I think, yeah.
Excellent.
That's the chat so far, sorry.
Yeah, okay, well, we're pretty much caught up. Okay, well, we've got another one, actually. We spoke about Techland and Dying Light 2 a couple of shows ago now. We cover so many topics on these shows, it's difficult to sort of grasp the timeline of when we've spoken about them. God, that's a studio that's had some sort of ups and downs in the press lately, hasn't it? But apparently, Dying Light 2 is far from being in development hell, which has been sort of... touted up until recently. How excited are we for Dying Light 2? Do we think it's going to be a good game? I mean, from what I've seen, it looks fantastic, and it is the sort of game I think I could get into. Luke, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I loved the first game. I thought it was brilliant.
See, I've not played the first game.
Yeah, I would recommend it, particularly if you can get it on PC and play it kind of all bells and whistles. It's really great. It still holds up very well to this day. It's a lot of fun, and the story is actually quite good. It quite surprised me because I didn't go into it expecting much from that angle, but I quite enjoyed it. So Dying Light 2, obviously something it's been in development for quite a long time. It appears they might have announced it a bit too early to try and kind of latch on to the continued hype and interest in Dying Light, which they've continued to update with various kind of expansions and extra bits of DLC, etc. So I don't take their message that it hasn't been in development hell with any real belief. I think that it clearly has had troubles. I mean,
trouble at the very top as well, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Avallone obviously is the biggest, example of that game having a lot of issues. There's been rumors that it's been scaled back in its ambition about how the story kind of diverges depending on your decisions, etc., which is something they made a big point of in the gameplay demo they did a few years ago. So apparently that might have been stripped back, which is a shame if so, but that's the way it is. So I think it'd be really interesting to see what they what they talk about, because it was interesting the way the post was phrased. It was just a development update. It wasn't we're going to show you some brand new gameplay. I think they're going to try and be as transparent as possible about what's happened and where the game is and where it's going, because I don't think it's going to release anytime soon. I suspect maybe it will come out. It'll probably come out next year at this point, given that it seems to have had some trouble. So I'm still really excited for it. I'm looking forward to seeing it again, and hopefully seeing it in a good place. And I'm happy to wait for the game to be in a good place before it releases. But yeah, it's definitely had a troubled development, and it's going to be interesting to see where it ends up.
I must admit, the footage that I've seen, they seem to have a HUD. So I'm hoping that what we have seen is possibly actual game code running and stuff, rather than just some CGI bits and bobs. But I think it looks absolutely beautiful. Scott, I mean, there was a rumor that Microsoft were banging on their door to make a purchase of Techland. What do you think? Is that still on, or is that still a rumor that's yet to be?
Yeah, I think Microsoft's been linked with just a Polish studio.
Yeah.
Years now, and obviously Techland being, I guess maybe second to CD Projekt Red in Poland, maybe. I don't see anything there personally, and I think a lot of that might come down to, as much as they claim it hasn't been development hell, I think it's apparent they've had some troubles in development, and there's been reports that came out fairly recently about a large number of key members of that team leaving. I think there was some issues with the CEO, if I remember correctly, from those, and it's probably important to sort of reiterate that they're simply reports that have come out, but it's obvious that the game's had troubles, and I wonder whether that's something that Microsoft would be interested in trying to fix. I don't think it would be personally, but I think this game was due to come out in spring 2020, if I remember, or early 2020. As Luke says, I think Luke's sort of in the right ballpark, where I don't think this is out till next year. Now, if your game gets delayed more than 12 months, and I know they can obviously say COVID's had an impact on it, but it was delayed long before COVID was a thing. That game's obviously had struggles, and if they've had to scale the project back from that initial reveal. So if you remember E3 2018, I think the E3 it was first revealed, all the reports that came out of the media from E3 that year were overwhelmingly positive. They saw the demo where they talked about the branching storylines, where you could do one thing. I think the example that they used was you could cut off a water supply for somewhere, or you could flood somewhere, or something like that.
It had consequences, didn't it?
Yeah, and that basically cut off that entire part of the game, and you just no longer could access it. And it sounded impressive. And as someone who really enjoyed the first game, I was really excited for that. And then it turns out maybe that's not how it goes, because maybe they couldn't quite get that right. It's going to be interesting to see what this game is, and I think the fact that they've used the language development update certainly tells us that we're not going to get a release date this week. It's just going to be a high level overview, and it'll be 2022 at the earliest, and that at that point is a two-year delay from its original window. So it's obviously had some struggles.
God, we've got so many games to come yet, haven't we? It's absolutely crazy. We've got so many games yet to come. What a great time to be a gamer. My God.
Yeah, 2022 is going to be big. I know
it is, isn't
still sort of early 2021, but I think a lot of the games that get pushed from this year to next year due to development difficulties due to COVID, I think 2022 is going to be pretty stacked.
I think people are assuming Starfield's coming in 2021. I mean, there is a very fair chance, and I think most people are assuming it's coming late 2021. So that alone means it could have a very fair chance of getting pushed back to 2022 as well. And obviously, we've got Halo Infinite coming late 2021 as well. So. Wow, what a great time! Removable Sanity. Did you play the first one? Did you play Dying Light 1?
I absolutely loved the original, and I still play it. And in fact, even as of about 2 weeks ago, it got an update. They still regularly update the game with unique little environments, and little challenges and skins. So even now, to the original game, they're still updating it. So props to them, because it's a game that is, like as you said, it's about 4 years old, probably even longer than that, and it's still being updated, it's still being tweaked, it's still being kept alive. And I know there is a very good community behind that still plays its multiplayer today, as well as its single player. So yeah, I'm looking forward to what they can accomplish. Again, like the others, I am slightly, it does bother me slightly about the rumors and the reports coming out regarding the troubles they're having. And it does slightly worry me in terms of they've had to scale back. Now, the question, I suppose, is had they scaled back due to the engine they're using, or had they had to scale back due to other aspects?
The engine they were using wasn't really. I know the developers themselves, they weren't happy on the engine that was being used. I know the CEO was insisting that they were going to use a particular engine, and I know the devs were sort of saying, "Well, that's going to put us back. It's not going to do quite what we want it to." So there's been lots of issues around that.
So do you think they may have actually done almost like, do you know what? We'll park it. We'll start fresh.
I think they did have to start afresh. Luke, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if you've heard the same sort of rumours as I have, but yeah, there's been some engine decisions that have really thrown a spanner in the works.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know whether they might have started afresh, but I think a lot of it. I think there's probably internally been some sort of some sort of revamp or reboot of elements of the game to get it to a different place than was originally shown. Which, given the language that they talked about because I think on Twitter they actually said to someone, "Oh, we're not in development hell," but we announced it too early, and given that, I suspect that even the demo we saw a couple of years ago, I think it was 2019 demo, that kind of big long one. I'm sure it was actual gameplay, but how representative that will be in the final experience, I think is going to be significantly in question now.
It is worrying. I must admit, I'm hoping that they can either bring it back, and obviously they've got the new upgraded hardware to work from now, so that will help them to a degree, but it will also throw an extra spanner in the works in terms of the software and how they can update their game, which they're already updating to meet that. I'm hoping that we'll hear something a little bit more, or they'll show something off a bit sooner rather than later.
Yeah. What platforms do you think it's going to come to now? Actually, obviously, it was announced for the previous gen hardware, but if
a good question.
If, as we say, it does
would
get
you
pushed back
put
to
it previously?
Where does it go?
Would you go for the previous hardware now, seeing what has happened with other games that have tried to do that?
Not if it's a 2022 release. Surely, that's the cutoff year, isn't it?
Well, it depends.
That's what I'm saying. They've had to make this decision, haven't they?
Yeah, if we're still struggling to get units out there, and people can't get their hands on it, the install base that they're going for is going to be much smaller. Yeah, so it'll be interesting, because I guess it depends. Maybe was part of the problem the ambition that they showed for the game was maybe the previous gen hardware just not capable of doing it. Was that maybe part of the problem? And
that's what I'm thinking. Maybe the Xbox One
does that help?
Is off, and they'll just do it from X and PlayStation Pro upwards. Maybe that's where they've decided that's it. Do you know what? It can't handle it.
Yeah, I think actually it will probably still release for the last gen consoles, and the reason for that is this is a game that's been in development hell for years and years and years, and it's going to cost a lot of money. If they've had to revamp parts of the game, that's going to cost more money. And I suspect I'm sure they've had tech issues, but to me, I think some of the more significant issues they might have been having, and I suppose we'll find out about this more, is this sort of integration of how they wanted the world to react to your decisions, etc. I think probably they've had issues with that and had to scale that element back, not necessarily the world, because the game looks like, let's take that last demo, right? It looks wonderful, but the original Dying Light looked wonderful. I don't think Dying Light 2 looks like significantly beyond that. So and that ran on perfectly well on last generation consoles. They didn't have any issues with that. So I would expect it to release on everything, but obviously I think they will it will most certainly run the best on new consoles, as long as we don't get a kind of cyberpunk situation. That, you know, as long as it runs, you know, and even that is still to some extent not very good on PC even. So as long as it's nothing like that, I think it'll be fine.
Slight tangent on the whole cyberpunk thing. Did that ever get reinstated at the PlayStation Store yet?
Oh, that's a good question.
I don't actually know.
I don't think it is. I think it's still offline on the PlayStation Store. Yeah.
No, I think
came
it
out
is
in
still
November, and we're in the middle of March now, and it still hasn't been reinstated. That's pretty wild. That is pretty wild.
Yeah, that's gonna disgruntle CD Projekt Red quite a lot with PlayStation, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. But do you think that's going to scare developers? You know, because that was pretty drastic action by Sony. So do you think someone like Techland, they're not going to want to release their game?
That's what I'm saying. Would you take the risk now?
Yeah. So because they know now the risk is their game can simply get delisted off PlayStation, which, you know, as we all know, has the larger install base. Are they willing to take that risk? And is that one of the reasons why there's going to be even maybe further delays into 2022? We'll have to see. But yeah, that's pretty crazy that Cyberpunk still isn't back in the PlayStation Store. It's pretty wild.
Wow, that's a big deal, isn't it? You know, considering the press and the money and the development time and the delays and stuff that game went through, to know that Sony have, albeit temporarily, have turned their back on it for months. I certainly didn't predict that. My God.
Yeah.
Pucks. Haven't heard from you for a little while. Have you got anything to update on what we've been talking about? Is there any chat that we need to bring up?
Yeah, I had something saved. Let me just quickly find it. So, Indie Gamer got back to us actually after we said that he was teasing us on this news on the 26th.
This better be good. Indie.
Well, he said that there is more info, but he can't go into too much detail as I would be spoiling the surprise and disrespecting my contact. But yes, one thing at the least, there will be. It's going to be awesome. So can't tell us any specifics due to obligations. That's fair enough. But yes, there apparently is some exciting news coming on the 26th of March, everyone. So put that in your calendars and blame Indy if nothing happens.
There were rumors of Hades coming to Game Pass fairly recently, I believe. So
wow,
true is that maybe part of the 26th?
That would be good if it was.
I've been holding off that game on PC for this very reason. So if that was to come true, then that would make all of my planning and scheming come good.
Yeah,
I'm in the same boat as you on that one, I must admit.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Sorry, I got a few more comments here. One from the Likely Lad who says, Dying Light was legit fantastic, great gameplay and story, and the second one will be worth waiting for, assuming it's not in dev limbo.
Yeah, hopefully not.
We had a comment. There was some chat going on about, Microsoft acquisitions again, who they can maybe go for next between a few members. And I got one saved comment here from Tuka Ngula who says, so Microsoft reiterated that they are still going to close another Bethesda level deal. Who do you think Microsoft are still in the market for? Warner Brothers, Ubisoft, Capcom, Sega? Question mark, question mark, question mark.
Or let's just do a quick round. Removable sanity. One. Just say one person. Who?
Capcom.
Capcom. Luke?
None of those.
Yep.
Oh, nice. Do you have an alternative?
No, but I suspect it will be someone a lot smaller than any of those next.
Okay. Scott?
I'm with Luke. I don't think they'll get anyone at the level of Bethesda. It'll be smaller developers, more along the lines of Playground and Ninja Theory. That sort of level of acquisition.
Okay.
Maybe Techland, I guess.
Well, you've got Bloober or so, but there's still quite a few left to hoover up, isn't there?
Yeah.
Puxley?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Luke on this one as well. I don't know if I can see any big names like these. I mean, if I had to pick one of those four, I'd probably say Sega. But yeah, I don't think either of those is likely, personally.
No, I guess I'm of the same opinion as you, Pucks. I'd love it to be Sega, but I don't think certainly not Ubisoft. The only reason I want it to be Sega, and we kind of had this conversation again a few shows ago, didn't we? It's just I want them to bring back some of the old IPs and some of the old classic Sega stuff. Even if Microsoft were to go and acquire Sega, that doesn't obviously necessarily guarantee that. But
yeah, I've just seen another comment in the chat, actually. I know we don't want to derail too much, because I know we're due to wrap up soon. But I've just seen something here from Black Eyed Dog, who says, at what point will Microsoft acquisitions be deemed a monopoly? And I think that is actually quite an important question to ask.
Yes, you know what? I was quite pleased at the moment that the European Commission obviously didn't think this was going to tip the balance. Sorry, obviously the Bethesda acquisition by Microsoft wasn't going to tip the balance in their favour so much that obviously there was going to be some sort of anti-competitive things coming in. And again, perhaps Luke will come to you on this one. But again, if there was to be another acquisition the size of Bethesda, and let's just play devil's advocate and pretend there is going to be one of those. Do you think they might be sailing into the waters of monopolies and things like that?
No, I wouldn't think so. It would depend on who, but even if you're talking about someone like I don't know, let's say
Ubisoft.
Let's go Ubisoft. Yeah, I don't think that will be the case. I mean, when you're going into stuff like competition applications, like Microsoft did with the Bethesda deal, and you have to define a market in which you think there might be competitive concerns. And the market in this case was the publishing of video games in the European Union, or rather in European states. And the Bethesda deal wasn't seen as having any issues with creating any sort of monopoly or anti-competitive practices, because if you think about who publishes games, just on a high level, right? You've got PlayStation, Nintendo, Microsoft, and then you've got everyone else. You've got Ubisoft, EA, Square Enix, tons and tons of publishers of games. So acquiring Bethesda, who by comparison to the entire market, right, are quite small. Yeah. Even though we consider them a very big publisher, and they're actually really small, or like not very big in the grand scheme of things. So even if you were to get a Ubisoft, it's still quite small. The one that I always see suggested that will never ever happen, or that if it happens, it will be either a carve out or it will be prohibited outright, is Microsoft buying Valve. And that will never happen, because the market won't just be publishing games in that case. It will essentially be publishing platforms. Microsoft already have, if you essentially look at the PC market on like PC publishing, and or rather game purchasing platforms, let's say, you've got the Windows Store, you've got the Epic Game Store, and you've got Steam. Effectively, that's it. I mean, you've got little ones, but they completely dominate that landscape. There is no chance a regulator will allow Microsoft to buy Valve and let them retain Steam as part of that deal. Right. So they would either say you have to sell Steam off and you can have the rest of Valve, or you can't do it at all. It just won't happen. So I always find it. It's not a silly suggestion. I just think people don't appreciate kind of that element. I suppose that Microsoft would effectively have a complete monopoly on game distribution platforms in the PC market if they bought Valve, and that's exactly the sort of scenario that regulators want to avoid happening. But in terms of the other stuff, if they bought a Ubisoft, it's very unlikely that they wouldn't be able to do that from a regulatory perspective. So, and bearing in mind as well, it's really easy to evidence this sort of stuff about how you don't have a monopoly, because, and I've literally done these applications to competition regulators where, you say, okay, here's our market. And then the regulator wants to know, okay, well, what percentage of the market do you occupy? What percentage of the market does your target occupy? Give us all these facts and figures. You have to go and do your research for that, and you have to back that up. And with Microsoft, it'll have been, for Bethesda especially, but also something like Ubisoft, if they're hypothetically to do it, it's really easy to go, here's all of the publishers in the market, here's all of the rough percentages that they occupy, here's a percentage we occupy, here's a percentage of the target. You can clearly see, it's below 25% overall. Let's have it, and that's it basically. Yeah. Sorry that went on a bit long, but hopefully
no. It's interesting. No, it's interesting stuff, and it does kind of answer a question because I must admit, I can't remember who asked the question there, but I was starting to think that, had there been another Bethesda style or size deal on the table, that perhaps they were sailing into those waters. But like you say, perhaps not. Then that's good to know.
Can I add to this though? Because I agree with everything Luke said. I think that's really good information. But I'm wondering, though, if for the majority of gamers out there who don't have that knowledge and experience to know that firsthand, or may struggle to understand it, do you reckon that Microsoft buying another, a big acquisition like Bethesda could make it appear like they are a monopoly, and therefore they get media scrutinized out of nowhere for no actual factual reason, if that makes sense?
Well, that's almost happened with the Bethesda deal, hasn't it? To a certain degree, there's a lot of people crying foul play, and Microsoft are using their formidable financial clout to sort of shape the gaming landscape.
Yeah, I mean, I think the difference is, I think a lot of people can cry monopoly in this industry in particular because frankly they don't want the game to be not on a platform that they like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That doesn't make it not a monopoly, and it's the when you're doing evaluations, or when the EU, for example, will do an evaluation on publishing in the game market, they don't really care where the game comes to. They're more concerned about, okay, well, in the market itself, are there enough publishers of video games? That there's diverse publishing, there's diverse pricing, etc., and there's lots of different options for consumers. That doesn't mean that they're looking at, okay, well, do PlayStation gamers get enough games from these people? What's going to happen if it's taken away from play? Like, they don't really care about that. So yeah, people can cry a bit about it, I think, sometimes, but it's. I don't think that would lead to any real scrutiny. Now, if Microsoft turn around in the next 6 months and buy Ubisoft, and then they say, oh, we're going after, like, I don't know, EA as well. Obviously, at that point, you're really getting into that kind of, okay, what are they trying to build here? And there will be more scrutiny from regulators on that point. But as to whether they're monopolies, that will depend on what the regulator thinks. I mean, the regulator can effectively say what they like for the most part, even though they usually don't. But it's an interesting one, yeah. But I think people sometimes just like to cry a lot because it doesn't come to their platform or a particular game, and I get that, but it doesn't mean it's a monopoly, legally speaking.
Yeah, no, that's all fantastic and fascinating points, to be honest, and I love learning about this sort of stuff because again, well, I'm probably guilty as much as most people are. We have an opinion and we voice our opinion, but it's not necessarily an educated opinion or an experienced opinion. It's just a gut feeling opinion. And it's nice to hear someone that's sort of in that particular sort of world of business that understands these sort of things. So no, that's great to know. Pucks, sorry, what else have we got in the chat? Because we're trying to wrap up the show.
That's right. I mean, unless you have any other particular questions, the last comment I want to read out is, I think, a good closer to the show, actually. So if you're happy and you have no other questions, I'll carry on.
Go on.
Okay, so Indie Gamer says, seasoned gaming could be your only problem in the Halo tournament, but he believes in us. Go GPG crew.
Thank you very much. Yes. I had some money. Well, I didn't have actual money, but I had virtual money on Mav doing quite well, but that hasn't transpired. So you got a bit of a pummeling from Season Gaming. So yes, well, if we make it through to the final, then we could be seeing them. Yeah, what do we think, boys?
Well, I'd have to rewatch the stream and see how screwed we may be, but. We have a good chance, I think. I believe in us as a team. I think we've done quite well so far. Well, I'm just speaking positives at the minute, so...
Well, Luke and Scott don't seem particularly scared.
No, we're not scared of anything.
Now, they got fire in their eyes, I think.
Exactly. Let me up.
I'm looking forward to maybe... no disrespect to our previous opponents, but I think when it gets a little bit more competitive, shall we say, I think that'll be even more fun than we've had so far. So looking forward to the increased competition in the later
Scott
round.
and Luke yanking at the chain. Come on, let me go.
Fire is out.
Well,
Let me at him.
There's in sports in particular, I don't know, this isn't quite the same, but you've got to just take it one game at a time, right? So I'm not even thinking of that. All I'm thinking of is next game. maybe against Boom or Xbox team. So we've got to get past that first, and then whoever we face in the finals is it doesn't matter to me because we'll just give it our best go.
I gotta be honest, I'm absolutely loving this tournament. I really am loving it and excited by it, and having such a great time. I just don't want to go out at this point. I'd love to make it through to the final.
Even if we don't know, I think because when we finished our game with Wandering Dutch, we had a bit of a discussion afterwards, which we live streamed as well, where we said that the whole idea of just different podcasting channels getting together and taking part in this tournament is just a fantastic idea. And how I think a lot of people would like to see, whether it's Gears of War or Call of Duty or name your game effectively. I think people are really eager to do this again. So hopefully, if people are willing to help organise such a thing, I think there's a load of people that would love to take part. So fingers crossed that we can get something happening again in the future, I think.
No, absolutely. I mean, my preference would obviously be Call of Duty, but I guess that's a game you have to pay for that not everyone might have. Whereas if it's a game that's in Game Pass, then I can't imagine there's many people in the Xbox podcasting community that don't have Game Pass.
Definitely, yeah.
So, and obviously, to keep it an Xbox-centric game, I guess Gears would be the natural sort of natural one next. How are we with Gears, guys? Are we good?
My Gears game is similar to my Halo game, and I played it back in the day multiplayer quite a lot, but haven't touched it in recent years, so I'd have a bit of freshening up to do, but I think it could be really fun, actually. Luke?
I was pretty good on it, kind of same level as Halo back in the day, but unlike Halo, I've not kept up with it properly, so muscle memory would probably come back at some point, but not as strong as Halo.
Fair enough. Scott?
I haven't played multiplayer Gears outside of Horde since Gears 1. So, unfortunately, it will. I love Horde. I love the Gears campaigns, but the multiplayer is not something I've ever really clicked with. Mainly because you've got the Nasher wall bouncing stuff that doesn't really fit. But can I just offer an apology to Dragon Wolf because
Go on.
Picked up my comment and he's even said, "Wow, we weren't even competitive." No, I didn't mean it like that, Dragon Wolf. My apologies, mate. Obviously, it was a great game, but obviously we get the point, where maybe in the next. Let's imagine the next game goes 5-5 and it's in the deciding game. That'll be awesome if we get that point. I think that'll make us sort of. You talked about us having our game faces on before. I think if we lose a couple of rounds, that'll really give us a bit of a kick up the arse, won't it? And that'll
absolutely
up at a level. So so apologies for that, Dragon Wolf, mate.
Yeah, you don't often see Scott squirming for words there, but you certainly did that, Dragon Wolf.
Cheers, mate. Appreciate it.
He's come back saying "F you, Scott." I mean.
I'm surprised you're still here, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, they were quite vocal after the game, and to be honest, like you said during the game, actually, Scott, we've been on the receiving end of a pasting like that, and it is not a fun experience.
Nah.
So you do have our sympathies, even though we were dishing out the pain, but we have been there, and it's not a pleasant experience because the thing is, the game. At some point, the game seems to conspire against you, and your spawns go to shit, and all of the power weapons have been taken, and it's like, and you're just behind at that point.
Yeah,
and Halo's the worst game for that as well. If you're on the end of it pacing in Halo, it can get really, really rough. I think other games, maybe something like Call of Duty, because you've got things like loadouts. I think it's maybe a little bit easier to get back into it. But if someone's controlling the map and the power weapons in Halo, it's really difficult to get back into it, especially if you're not experienced in playing the game. So, to be fair, Dragon Ball, I'd be like that if we played Gears. I'd just be getting my ass kicked every single round. So
don't give him ideas. He'll be suggesting that next.
Don't expect an awful lot from me, flat mate.
Excellent. Well, removable. We'll have to have you on the subs bench. What are you like at Gears multiplayer?
I think Stubbs would have a very bad word to say about that.
Okay.
I'm very much a Horde mode man. I love the Horde mode. I've played every single thing on that. Multiplayer for me, I'm not brilliant. I'm not brilliant at all. I can pretty much stick with my Nasher sometimes, but I'm not as good as where you see those where they just bounce from one wall to the other and then it's one single shot and you're gone. They're like, how do you do that? If it was a competitive Horde, I think I could be in with a win. But if it's multiplayer, I'd probably be more of a hindrance.
Wow. Fantastic. I can't help feeling that this will either be an annual event where all of the podcasters get together and have a showdown, or perhaps a little bit more frequent than that. I think it's a fantastic idea. Hats off to Forkboy and the GBTB crew for getting all of this set up, because I know it's a pain in the arse trying to get a load of people together at the same place at the same time. I don't know if anyone's ever organised a stag do. If anyone has, they'll know what I'm on about. It's just an absolute nightmare to get people
and
together.
Different time zones.
And different, oh my God, time zones, yeah, exactly, and map rotations and loadouts. There's lots of comments flying in. So massive thank you to Forkboy and the guys that have put all of this together in the first place. Right, I think that wraps the show up, guys. Thank you ever so much. I've had an absolutely fantastic time. Chat, you have been absolutely brilliant tonight. I've loved every second of that. You've thrown a few grenades in, and that's really cool. We like that. I'm used to grenades now. Playing, but, coming in from left, right, and centre, so that's fine. I can dodge and jump over those now. So fantastic. Let's just do a quick round. Removable Sanity, thank you, my friend. I know you had some trouble getting in, but you made it in the end. I hope you had a good time. Thank you for being part of the show.
Again, I appreciate it so much for even just being allowed onto the show. And again, my sincerest apologies. It's not something that happens on a regular basis. I felt mortified even just diving in at such a late stage. But again, thank you to all, to the people in chat and also the panel members for even letting me speak. It is truly appreciated.
No problem at all, my friend. Luke, well, part of the GPG crew. You're locked in now, my friend. I'm afraid we're not going to let you go. We're going to chain you to the radiator. Thank you for being here. Have you had a good time?
Yeah, great time. It's been a fantastic show, and it's great to have Removable on as well, who's great. Technical issues notwithstanding. So, so it's always just awesome being here, and especially with the chat, and obviously you guys just make it a great show, and it's always a highlight of my week, just right before I have to go back to work, and we all have to go back to work. So, you kind of go out on a high and quickly come down on a low as you took yourself away to wake up tomorrow. So, but no, it's been brilliant, and thank you again for having me on.
No worries, guys. Before we get to Scott, we've got 24 people watching now. Just to let you guys know, we've got a Discord server that we run. I've made Scott a moderator. Obviously, Pucks and I are admin on that. Please, while we'll stick a link down below, join our Discord server. Let's carry on the chat beyond the show. It's fantastic to speak to you guys. People post things in there that I'm not aware of, and they're great topics for the show sometimes, because I know if someone's gone to the time and effort to post something on our Discord server, that it's a topic that they feel passionate about, and it's one that we'll probably cover. So yeah, get involved, and the conversation can carry on beyond the confines of this podcast. That's fantastic. Luke, change to the other end of the same radiator. Thank you for being here, my friend. You're quite active on the Discord server, and I don't know if you realised, but I made you a moderator earlier, as you are obviously in the Gamepass Gaming YouTube channel.
Yeah,
thank you for being here.
The wrong way. I discovered both just sort of by accident earlier in the week, I think it was. So I was just like, Flap, what does this little sort of wrench spanner icon mean here? Because I don't know what it means. So yeah, appreciate you inviting me back on, Flap. I guess part of the furniture now. So looking forward to being on future shows. I would just like to say we've not actually called Removable Sanity by his official name of Mr. Sanity that I believe Fox gave him last week as well. So
I did, yes.
I thought you'd all forgotten. I literally thought you'd all forgotten.
It was a pleasure as always having Mr. Sanity on the show, and obviously loved just love it every week. It's a really lovely way just to end the week, just to chat games with friends and a great group of people. So thank you very much to you guys, and obviously the chat as well. And apologies to Dragon Wolf again.
Obviously. You're not going to sleep tonight now, are you, Scott? Worrying about that. Well, here's to our next game, whoever that may be with. I'm hoping that we'll find out in the next couple of hours because I'd love to know. I would really, nothing against Xbox 448 whatsoever, but Boom was the guy that kind of inspired me to start this entire channel. And in the space of, less than a year, we've got over 700 subs and some. We've met the most fantastic people, and we've got some of them on the panel with us tonight. The rest are in the chat, guys. It's been an absolutely fantastic journey, and the guy that got me started was Boom. So to see him in the semi-finals would be fantastic. So I've got my fingers crossed for him. If it's Xbox 448, then so be it. Bring it on. We'll bring the game to them. Pucks. It's been a great show. Thank you for looking after the chat and bringing your experience and knowledge. It's been a good one.
No worries. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I don't know what I say. Chat has been. You've been very fun tonight. Actually, I've really enjoyed the topics and the interactions. It's been really good fun. One little shameless plug here, actually. I think so. We've had a few messages in the chat on other shows and tonight about when we can set up YouTube memberships, and we've had a few private messages in the past about how we can be supported financially, which we never expect, but we really do appreciate the thought. But to be honest, guys, if you are those people and you want to help us do that, the way to do that is to, for better or worse, get us to 1,000 subs. So, because once we reach that point, it kind of YouTube unlocks those kind of features for us. So if you do want to do that stuff for us, please help us spread the word and help us, subscribe, like, share this thing to all your family and friends who you think will enjoy the show. And if you can get them to sub as well, that'd be absolutely great. But yeah, we absolutely love this journey with you guys and very much appreciate your support regardless. So thank you all very much.
Our first few videos are still on the website if anyone can be bothered to go and watch those. It is literally just me and Pucks with, I think, 2 or 3 viewers, and that was probably me and Pucks. I think Fugly was one of the first along, and then VJ, and then a few others. And then you start seeing your regulars, and it's so fantastic just to see this amazing community build up slowly with the same regulars that all bring fantastic and different things to the party. I absolutely love being part of all of this.
100%. Been a good show. Thank you all very much.
It has, yes. Well, thank you very much, chat. Like Puck said, you have been absolutely brilliant tonight. So I'm incredibly grateful for your input. And like I say, you make things fun. You bring a different aspect to it. Thank you for being here. Please, if you can, hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Please help spread the word on Twitter and any other social media platforms. It really does help. And that's it. So hopefully we'll have some good news about our next victory, potentially next Sunday's show. And we're going to see who we'll be playing. So thank you for watching. Get involved, and we'll see you then. Take it easy.